When Evan Cole threw himself in front of a stranger's child, he never imagined that single bullet would change everything. One desperate man, one loaded gun, one impossible choice. What happened next brought 12 Harley-Davidsons roaring to his doorstep and turned a struggling single dad into a legend. This is the story of sacrifice, brotherhood, and redemption that nobody saw coming. Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The rain started at 6:47 a.m., just like the weather app had promised, drumming against the cracked windshield of Evan Cole's 2004 Honda Civic with the kind of persistence that matched his daughter's morning questions. Fat droplets raced each other down the glass while Lily, buckled in the back seat with her frozen backpack clutched to her chest, peppered him with the rapid-fire curiosity of an 8-year-old who'd inherited her mother's sharp mind. "Dad, why do clouds cry?" she asked, pressing her nose against the window. Evan caught her eyes in the rearview mirror, those same honey-brown eyes that Sarah had passed down before cancer had taken her 2 years ago, and felt his chest tighten, the way it always did when Lily looked too much like her mother. "They're not crying, kiddo. It's just water doing its thing. Goes up, comes down, circle of life." Like in The Lion King? Exactly like that. He checked his watch, 7:03. They were late, again. Third time this week, and his supervisor at the construction site had already warned him that tardiness wasn't just frowned upon. It was a pink slip waiting to happen. Single dads didn't get the luxury of understanding bosses. Not when the economy was tight and younger, unencumbered workers were lined up around the block. The streets of Ridgefield, Ohio, glistened like oil slicks under the October sky. This town of 43,000 souls had seen better days. The textile mill had closed in 2019, taking half the town's jobs with it, and Main Street wore its economic wounds like visible scars. Empty storefronts with soap-streaked windows, faded for-lease signs that had been up so long they'd become permanent fixtures. But there were survivors too. Tommy's Hardware, Chen's Pharmacy, and the Morning Grind coffee shop, which occupied the corner of 5th and Madison in a renovated brick building that had once been a bank. It was to the Morning Grind that Evan now pointed his dying sedan, its engine making a concerning rattling sound that his buddy Marcus kept promising to look at next weekend. The coffee shop was his Tuesday morning ritual, the one small luxury he allowed himself before dropping Lily at Ridgefield Elementary and driving another 20 minutes to the construction site where he mixed concrete and tried not to think about the engineering degree he'd never finished. "Can I get hot chocolate?" Lily asked as he pulled into a parking spot between a sensible Toyota and something that made him do a double take, a chrome-heavy Harley-Davidson with custom paint that probably cost more than his car. "With whipped cream?" "Please, please, please." He killed the engine. "Okay, but we're doing the quick grab thing, in and out. I can't be late again." I know. Mr. Patterson gets grumpy." "Mr. Patterson gets firedy," Evan corrected, unbuckling and opening her door. The rain had softened to a drizzle, the kind that soaked you without you realizing it. He pulled up the hood of Lily's jacket, bright yellow, picked specifically so he could spot her anywhere, and grabbed his wallet from the console. $17. That had to last until Friday. The moment they pushed through the Morning Grind's door, warmth and noise enveloped them like a living thing. The place smelled like espresso and cinnamon rolls, but what struck Evan immediately wasn't the scent. It was the leather, and the chrome, and the ink. The Iron Saints had taken over the shop. He counted 12 of them, maybe 15, occupying the mismatched tables and vintage church pews that gave the Morning Grind its eccentric charm. They were a motorcycle club, one of the few in Ridgefield that kept to themselves in the straight and narrow, or so Marcus had told him. These weren't the one-percenters you saw on TV, the kind whose club patches came with federal investigations. The Iron Saints did charity rides, raised money for veterans, and occasionally got drunk and loud at Jerry's bar, but nothing worse than half the football team on homecoming. Still, they were an impressive sight. Leather vests called cuts, adorned with patches, thick beards, arms covered in tattoos that told stories in ink and skin. A few of the bikers had old ladies with them, the term of endearment the motorcycle world used for wives and long-term partners, women who wore their own leather and looked like they could handle themselves just fine. Evan felt Lily's hand tighten in his as they approached the counter. She wasn't scared, exactly, more fascinated, the way kids get around anything that seems larger than life. "Morning, Evan." The voice belonged to Cheryl, a 50-something woman with reading glasses on a chain and a smile that had made this coffee shop a town institution for the past 15 years. "The usual? Black coffee, lard, and hot chocolate with extra whipped cream," Lily announced, bouncing on her toes. "Coming right up, sweetheart." Cheryl winked and turned to her espresso machine, which hissed and gurgled like a dragon with indigestion. Evan pulled out his wallet, counting bills, when Lily's hand slipped from his. Lily. But she was already moving, drawn like a magnet toward the far corner of the shop, where a little girl in a purple unicorn dress sat at a table next to the biggest biker Evan had ever seen. The man was a mountain, 6'4" at least, shoulders like a linebacker, arms covered in elaborate tattoos that crawled up his neck in geometric patterns. His beard was shot through with gray, and his eyes, when they flickered up, were the pale blue of winter ice. "Lily!" Evan moved to intercept, but his daughter was already standing in front of the biker's table, staring at the little girl with open curiosity. "I like your dress," Lily said. "I have one like it, but it's blue. It's—" The little girl looked up from her coloring book. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, and smiled shyly. "Thank you. Daddy got it for my birthday." "This is my daddy," Lily announced as Evan arrived, mortified. "Sorry, I told her to stay close." The big biker held up a hand, and despite the intimidating appearance, his smile was warm. "No harm done, brother. Kids are curious. That's how they should be." His voice was surprisingly gentle, though it carried the weight of someone used to being heard. "This is my daughter, Maddie." "Hi, Maddie, I'm Lily." Evan extended his hand, feeling underdressed in his faded Carhartt jacket and jeans, with concrete dust still on them from yesterday. "Evan Cole. Sorry for the intrusion." The biker's handshake was firm but not crushing. "Ryder Monroe, president of the Iron Saints," he gestured to the assembly around them. "We're having our weekly breakfast meeting. Coffee shop was kind enough to let us take over the joint." There was something in Ryder's eyes, a recognition that passed between them in that moment. Two fathers in a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning, both doing the school run, both carrying the particular kind of exhaustion that came from raising kids without a partner. Evan had noticed the absence of a wedding ring, and he suspected Ryder had clocked the same on him. "Single dad?" Ryder asked, keeping his voice low. Evan nodded. 2 years now. 3 for me. It's a hell of a job, isn't it? The hardest one I've ever had. Evan glanced at Lily, who was now showing Maddie her backpack and explaining in detail the difference between Elsa and Anna. "But it's the only one that matters." "Amen to that." Ryder took a sip of his coffee. "Black," Evan noted, same as his own. "You work in town?" "Construction, Patterson's crew. We're doing the renovation on the old Mercy Hospital building." Evan checked his watch again, 7:17. They needed to move. "I should get going. I'm already pushing it." "Evan, order up," Cheryl called from the counter. He corralled Lily with gentle hands on her shoulders. "Come on, kiddo. Say goodbye to your new friend." "Bye, Maddie." "Bye, Lily. Maybe we can play sometime." "That'd be awesome." As Evan guided his daughter back toward the counter, Ryder called out, "Hey, Cole." Evan turned. The biker president was studying him with an expression that seemed to look straight through his skin and into his bones. "You ever need anything, and I mean anything, you let me know. Single dads gotta look out for each other." It was a strange offer from a stranger, but something about it felt genuine. Evan nodded. "Appreciate that." He collected their orders, hot chocolate with an embarrassing mountain of whipped cream that made Lily gasp with delight, and his coffee in a paper cup that burned his palm just right. The total came to $7.50, and he handed over a 10, telling Cheryl to keep the change. Tips mattered in a town like this. They were halfway to the door when everything changed. The sound of the door slamming open was wrong, too hard, too violent, carrying with it a gust of cold air and something else. Something electric and terrible. Evan turned, instinct from his 3 years in the army kicking in before his conscious mind caught up. A man stood in the doorway, soaked to the skin, wearing a green military surplus jacket and jeans that hung on him like he'd lost weight fast and hard. His eyes were wrong, too wide, too wild, darting around the coffee shop with the frantic energy of a cornered animal. And in his right hand, held at waist level but unmistakable, was a snub-nosed revolver. Time did that thing it does in moments of crisis. It stretched and compressed simultaneously, every detail becoming hyper-vivid while the seconds themselves seemed to thicken like molasses. "Nobody move!" The man's voice cracked on the second word. He was young, Evan realized, maybe 25, with a sparse beard and the kind of pallor that spoke of sleepless nights and chemical dependence. "Nobody fucking move!" The coffee shop erupted in the chaos of panic. A woman screamed. Cheryl dropped something behind the counter with a crash of breaking ceramic. Several of the Iron Saints stood up from their tables, hands moving to their waists, where Evan knew some of them probably carried legally. "Easy, brother." Ryder's voice cut through the noise, calm and commanding. He'd risen to his full height, hands visible, palms out. "Easy. Nobody needs to get hurt here." "Shut up! Shut the fuck up!" The gunman swung the revolver toward Ryder, and that's when Evan saw it. The way the man's hand shook, the sweat on his brow despite the cold. The pupils dilated to the point where his eyes looked black. Drugs, probably meth or crack, something that had wound him up so tight that reason had left the building. Evan's hand found Lily's head, pressing her face against his leg, trying to shield her from seeing. His coffee had fallen, splashing across the floor, but he didn't remember dropping it. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to grab his daughter and run, but the man was blocking the door, and any sudden movement might set him off. "I need money," the gunman said, his voice rising and falling erratically. I just need the money from the register. That's all. That's all, and I'm gone." "Okay," Cheryl said from behind the counter, her voice surprisingly steady. "Okay, honey, I'm opening the register now. I'm getting you the money. Just stay calm." "I'm calm," he screamed, which would have been funny under any other circumstances. "I'm fucking calm." Evan's eyes tracked the room, his old training kicking in despite not having worn a uniform in over a decade. The Iron Saints had spread out subtly, creating a loose perimeter around the gunman. They were thinking about rushing him, Evan realized. They were calculating angles and distances, figuring out who would take the bullet when they made their move. But the gunman was twitchy, unpredictable. Even if they got to him, that gun was going to go off. And when it did, Evan's eyes found Maddie. Ryder's daughter was still sitting at the table where they'd left her, frozen in her chair, her coloring book forgotten in front of her. And the angle. God, the angle was wrong. The way the gunman was positioned, swinging between Ryder and Cheryl behind the counter, if that gun went off. The little girl in the unicorn dress was directly in the line of fire. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was muffled against his jeans, small and scared. "I'm scared. I know, baby, I know. Just keep your eyes closed, okay? Keep them closed." Cheryl had the register open now, pulling out bills with shaking hands. Here, it's about $300. It's everything we have. Just take it and go." "Please!" The gunman lurched forward, and that's when everything went to hell. One of the Iron Saints, a younger guy with a red beard and a skull tattoo on his neck, made his move. He came in from the side fast and low, going for the gun hand, but the gunman saw him coming, spun, and the revolver swung wide, toward Maddie. Evan didn't think. Thinking took time, and there wasn't any. His body moved on its own, powered by something deeper than conscious thought, some primal directive that said children must be protected, even if they're not yours, even if you've never met them before, even if it costs you everything. He shoved Lily toward a nearby table, hard enough that she stumbled but safely out of the line of fire, and launched himself across the coffee shop. 6 feet of open space. He covered it in less than a second, his boots finding purchase on the wet floor. Maddie's eyes went wide as he threw himself in front of her, his body becoming a wall between the little girl and the gun. The revolver barked. A sharp crack that seemed impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Evan felt the impact before he heard it, a sledgehammer blow to his left shoulder that spun him halfway around. There was no pain at first, just shock. The sensation of his body registering that something catastrophic had happened without quite understanding what. Then the pain arrived, white-hot and total, radiating from the entry wound like he'd been branded with a poker pulled straight from a fire. His legs went weak, but he stayed upright through sheer force of will, his body still positioned between the gunman and Maddie. "It's okay," he heard himself saying, though his voice sounded strange and distant. His right hand pressed against his left shoulder, and when he pulled it away, it came back red. So much red. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're safe." Behind him, chaos erupted in earnest. The Iron Saints piled onto the gunman like an avalanche, taking him down in a mass of leather and fury. The revolver went skittering across the floor. Someone was shouting, multiple someones. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Ryder appeared in Evan's field of vision, scooping up Maddie in his arms, checking her for injuries with hands that shook despite their size. "You're okay, baby girl? You're okay? Did he hurt you?" "No, Daddy. The man stopped him. The man helped me." Ryder's eyes found Evan's, and in them was something Evan had never seen before, a debt that couldn't be repaid, a gratitude that went beyond words. Ryder's voice broke. "You took a bullet for my daughter." "Yeah." Evan tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Yeah, I guess I did." His legs finally gave out, and he sat down hard on the floor. The coffee shop spun around him, colors too bright, sounds too loud. He could hear Lily crying, calling for him, but when he tried to turn his head to find her, the world tilted. Strong hands caught him before he could fall completely. One of the Iron Saints, the one with the red beard who'd tried to stop the gunman, was suddenly there, pressing something against Evan's shoulder. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out," the biker said. "Stay with us, brother. Stay with us." Evan wanted to tell him that he was fine, that he'd had worse in Kandahar, that this was nothing, but the words wouldn't come. His mouth tasted like copper. The edges of his vision were going dark. "Lily," he managed. "My daughter." "She's safe," Ryder's voice said from somewhere above him. "She's safe. You saved my girl, and I promise you, I swear to God, your girl will never want for anything. You hear me, Cole? You're family now. You're saints." Evan wasn't sure what that meant, but it sounded important. He tried to nod, to acknowledge, but his body wasn't responding right anymore. The dark edges of his vision were closing in, a tunnel narrowing to a pinpoint. The last thing he heard before the darkness took him was Lily's voice, breaking with sobs. "Don't leave me, Daddy. Please don't leave me. I need you. Please." And even though he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but bleed on the floor of a coffee shop in a dying Ohio town, Evan Cole smiled. Because his daughter was safe, and Maddie was safe. And that was all that mattered. The darkness was warm and soft, and when it finally swallowed him whole, he went without fear. After all, he'd done what fathers do. He'd protected the children. Everything else was just details. The sirens got louder, and then the world went away entirely, reduced to nothing but the sound of rain against windows and the distant thunder of Harley-Davidson engines, like the sky itself was mourning and celebrating all at once. The fluorescent lights of Ridgefield Memorial Hospital burned with the kind of sterile brightness that made everything look both too sharp and somehow unreal, like a photograph overexposed until the subjects became ghostly versions of themselves. Evan swam up from the darkness slowly, his consciousness returning in fragments. First sound, then sensation, then finally the crushing weight of memory that made him wish he could sink back down into that peaceful oblivion. His shoulder was on fire. No, that wasn't quite right. Fire was too simple a word for what he felt. This was something more specific, more surgical in its intensity, a deep, throbbing ache that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, radiating out from a point just below his left collarbone where the bullet had torn through muscle and tissue before lodging itself against bone. They'd removed it, he learned later. 3 hours of surgery to extract the flattened piece of lead and repair the damage it had done on its brief, violent journey through his body. The first face he saw when his eyes finally focused was Lily's. She was asleep in a chair that had been pulled up close to his bed, her head resting on the mattress near his right hand, her fingers wrapped around two of his like she was afraid he might disappear if she let go. Someone had given her a hospital blanket, pale blue with white stripes, and it was tucked around her small body with the careful precision that told Evan a nurse had been by recently. Her face, even in sleep, carried the tear tracks of crying, and her breathing hitched occasionally with those little aftershock sobs that children get when they've cried themselves into exhaustion. Evan's chest constricted with a pain that had nothing to do with bullet wounds. He'd promised Sarah, in those final weeks when the cancer had hollowed her out until she was more spirit than substance, that he would take care of their daughter, that Lily would never feel alone, never feel afraid, never have to watch another parent slip away from her. And here he was, pumped full of painkillers and antibiotics, having thrown himself in front of a bullet while his daughter watched. What kind of father did that? What kind of man left his child potentially orphaned for a stranger's kid? But even as the thought formed, he knew the answer. The only kind of man worth being. Because if he'd hesitated, if he'd calculated the risk and chosen his own safety over Maddie's life, he wouldn't have been able to look at himself in the mirror. Wouldn't have been able to look at Lily and tell her about courage, about doing the right thing even when it's hard, about being the kind of person who stands between the innocent and the harm that seeks them. Sarah would have understood. She'd married a soldier, after all. She'd known exactly what that meant. "You're awake." The voice came from the doorway, soft and careful not to wake Lily. Evan turned his head, carefully, because everything hurt, and found Marcus Washington leaning against the frame, his work boots leaving traces of mud on the linoleum, his face carrying an expression somewhere between relief and barely suppressed anger. Marcus was his best friend, had been since they'd met at a VA support group 3 years ago. Two combat veterans trying to figure out how to be civilians, how to sleep through the night without nightmares, how to exist in a world that mostly didn't understand what they'd seen and done. Marcus had been Marine Force Recon. Evan had been Army Infantry. Different branches, same damage. They'd bonded over bad coffee and worse memories. And when Sarah got sick, Marcus had been there for every hospital visit, every late-night panic, every moment when Evan thought he couldn't possibly carry one more ounce of grief. "What time is it?" Evan's voice came out rough, like he'd been gargling gravel. "Little past 9. At night. You've been out for about 12 hours. Marcus pushed off from the doorframe and walked over, moving with the slight limp he'd earned from an IED outside Fallujah. He pulled up another chair, sitting down with a wince. "You scared the hell out of me, brother. I got a call from Jenny at the construction site saying you'd been shot. Shot, Evan. In a coffee shop in Ridgefield, Ohio. I've had quieter tours in Iraq." "Is the girl okay? Maddie?" "Seriously? You take a bullet and that's your first question?" But Marcus was smiling, that crooked grin that said he understood even when he pretended not to. "Yeah, man, the girl's fine, not a scratch on her. Her dad's been by 3 times already, trying to see you. Hospital wouldn't let him in, family only until you woke up. The nursing staff is terrified of him." "Ryder, he's a teddy bear. He's a 6'4" biker who looks like he could bench press a Buick, and he's been pacing the waiting room like a caged tiger, telling anyone who'll listen that you're a hero and he owes you a blood debt. His words, not mine. The nurses drew straws to see who had to tell him to leave." Marcus leaned back, studying Evan with those sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. "They finally compromised. He's allowed back in the morning, but only after the doc clears you for visitors." Evan glanced down at Lily, whose breathing had evened out into the deeper rhythms of genuine sleep. "How long has she been here?" "Since they let her in, about 6 hours ago. She wouldn't leave. They tried to take her to the children's waiting area, but she had a complete meltdown. Screaming, crying, the works. Finally, one of the nurses, Diane, I think her name is, convinced the doctor to make an exception." Marcus's voice softened. "She's been through enough, Evan, losing her mom and now this. That kid's tougher than most soldiers I know, but she's running on empty." The guilt came back, heavy and suffocating. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't." Marcus cut him off, his voice sharp enough to make Lily stir slightly in her sleep. He waited until she settled before continuing, quieter now. "Don't you dare sit there and second-guess what you did. I've seen the security footage. Cops showed it to me when they took my statement. You had maybe 2 seconds from the time that gun swung around to the time it went off. 2 seconds to process, react, and move. And you put yourself between a bullet and a child. That's not reckless, brother. That's heroic. That's exactly what guys like us are trained to do. Guys like us are trained to fight wars, not get shot in coffee shops. Guys like us are trained to protect people who can't protect themselves. Doesn't matter if it's Kandahar or Ridgefield. A threat's a threat. and you neutralized it the only way you could. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The gunman's in custody, by the way. Kyle Brennan, 26, 3 priors for possession. He'll be going away for a long time. Assault with a deadly weapon, attempted robbery, reckless endangerment. The prosecutor's talking 15 to 20, maybe more. Evan closed his eyes, trying to remember the man's face, but all he could conjure was a blur of panic and desperation. He was high. Crystal meth, according to the talk screen. He'd been up for about 3 days straight, needed money for his next fix, picked the wrong coffee shop to rob. Marcus shook his head. Could have been worse, could have been so much worse. If those bikers hadn't been there, if you hadn't... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The door opened again, this time admitting a woman in navy blue scrubs with a stethoscope around her neck and a tablet in her hand. She was somewhere in her 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the kind of efficient kindness that came from years of telling people both the best and worst news of their lives. Mr. Cole, you're awake. I'm Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. I performed your surgery. She glanced at Marcus, then at the sleeping Lily, and softened. I can come back if you need more time with your family. No, it's fine. I want to know... Evan shifted, trying to sit up, and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his shoulder. How bad is it? Dr. Okonkwo moved to his bedside, her fingers finding his wrist to check his pulse with practiced ease. The bullet entered your anterior shoulder, passing through your pectoralis major and deltoid muscles before impacting your scapula, your shoulder blade. Fortunately, it missed your subclavian artery by about 2 centimeters. If it had hit that vessel, you would have bled out in the ambulance. She said it matter-of-factly, the way doctors do when they're used to working in fractions of inches between life and death. We removed the bullet, repaired the muscle damage, and you'll need physical therapy, probably 3 to 4 months of it, but you should regain full function eventually. Eventually? Your arm's going to be in a sling for at least 6 weeks. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. After that, we'll start you on PT to rebuild strength and range of motion. You were lucky, Mr. Cole. Incredibly lucky. Another 2 centimeters to the right, and we'd be having a very different conversation, or not having one at all. Lucky. Evan supposed that was one way to look at getting shot. When can I go home? We'll keep you tonight for observation, make sure there's no infection or complications. If everything looks good in the morning, we can discharge you around noon. You'll go home with pain medication, antibiotics, and very strict instructions about wound care and physical limitations. Dr. Okonkwo made a note on her tablet. Do you have someone who can help with your daughter? You won't be able to pick her up or do any kind of physical care that requires your left arm. Evan glanced at Marcus, who nodded immediately. I've got him, Doc. I can take a few days off work, help him get settled. Good. Because, Mr. Cole, I'm serious about the restrictions. Your body just went through significant trauma. You need rest, proper nutrition, and time to heal. If you push too hard too fast, you risk tearing the surgical repairs and setting yourself back months. Understood? Understood. She didn't look convinced, but she'd probably said the same thing to 100 stubborn men who all thought they could tough their way through recovery. I'll have the nurse bring you some water and something light to eat. Your daughter can stay the night if she wants. We'll bring in a cot. Try to rest. She paused at the door. What you did was remarkable, Mr. Cole. Foolish, perhaps, but remarkable. That little girl is alive because of you. After she left, Marcus stood up and stretched, his spine popping audibly. I'm going to grab some coffee and let you have some time with Lily. I'll be back in an hour, and then I'm camping out on that couch over there whether you like it or not. Someone's got to make sure you don't do anything stupid like trying to run a marathon or bench press a sedan. Wouldn't dream of it. Liar. But Marcus was grinning. He clapped Evan gently on his good shoulder and headed for the door, pausing just before he left. Hey, Evan, I'm proud of you, man. Sarah would be too. Then he was gone, and Evan was alone with his sleeping daughter and the sound of machines beeping out his vital signs in steady, reassuring rhythms. He waited until he was sure Marcus was out of earshot, then carefully, gently, he moved his right hand to stroke Lily's hair. She stirred at the touch, her eyes fluttering open, confused at first, then focusing on his face with sudden, desperate intensity. Daddy? Hey, kiddo. She launched herself at him, and only his quick reflexes and her small size prevented her from crashing into his injured shoulder. He wrapped his good arm around her, holding her as she sobbed into his chest, her whole body shaking with the release of hours of pent-up terror. I thought you were going to die like Mommy," she choked out between sobs. "There was so much blood, and you fell down, and you weren't moving, and I thought, I know, baby, but I'm okay. I'm right here." He pressed his lips to the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." "You promised Mommy wouldn't leave either." The words hit harder than the bullet had, because they were true and there was no defense against them. He'd made promises he couldn't keep, had learned the hard way that love and willpower weren't enough to hold back death when it came calling. But this was different. This time, he'd had a choice. "You're right," he said quietly. "I did promise that, and I couldn't keep it because sometimes bad things happen that we can't control. Your mom getting sick, that wasn't anyone's fault. It just happened. But today, what happened in that coffee shop, I could control. I could choose to help. And yeah, it was dangerous. And yeah, I got hurt. But that little girl, Maddie, she's alive because I made that choice. And I'd make it again, Lily, every single time." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes red and swollen. "Even though it scared me?" "Even though it scared you. Because that's what we do. We help people who need help. We stand up when someone needs standing up for. Your mom taught me that. She spent her whole life as a nurse, taking care of people, making them better. And in the end, she fought so hard to stay with us, not because she was afraid to go, but because she loved us and wanted to be here. That's courage, Lily, real courage, and today you showed it too. I didn't do anything. You stayed calm when everything was crazy. You listened when I told you to close your eyes. You were brave even though you were terrified. That's everything." He wiped her tears with his thumb. "And I need you to keep being brave because I'm going to be kind of useless for a while. Can't pick you up, can't make breakfast with one arm. You're going to have to help me out. Think you can do that?" She nodded, sniffling. "I can make cereal. And I can reach the peanut butter." "That's my girl." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse, the one Marcus had mentioned, Diane, according to her name tag, peeked in with a tray. "I've got some dinner for you, Mr. Cole. Nothing fancy, just chicken broth and Jell-O, but it's a start. And young lady," she smiled at Lily, "I bet you haven't eaten either. How about I see if I can find some mac and cheese?" "The good kind?" Lily asked suspiciously. "Not the hospital kind?" Diane laughed. "I'll see what I can do. No promises, but my son's about your age, and I know where the kitchen staff hides the good snacks." After the nurse left with Lily's order, Evan managed to eat a few spoonfuls of broth before exhaustion pulled at him again. The painkillers were strong, turning his thoughts syrupy and slow. But before he could drift off, Lily's voice brought him back. "Dad? The man, the one with the gun. Why did he want to hurt people?" "How did you explain addiction to an 8-year-old? How did you convey the way drugs could hijack a person's brain, turn them into someone desperate and dangerous? Someone who would point a gun at strangers for the contents of a cash register?" "He was sick," Evan said finally. "Not like Mommy was sick, but sick in his mind. He was taking drugs that made him make bad choices, and he needed money to buy more drugs. It doesn't make what he did okay, but it helps us understand why someone would do something so scary." "Will he get better?" "I don't know, kiddo. I hope so. But that's not our job to worry about right now. Our job is to take care of each other and get me healed up." She seemed to accept this, settling back into her chair with the blanket pulled up to her chin. "Daddy? Mr. Ryder's been waiting to see you. The nurses said he's been here all day. Why is he so worried about you?" "Because I helped his daughter. And he's a good man who understands what that means." "Are we friends with him now?" Evan thought about Ryder's eyes in that moment after the shooting, the way the biker had looked at him like he'd witnessed something sacred, something that transcended the casual boundaries between strangers. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think we are." The night passed in fractured pieces, pain medication pulling him under, then strange dreams jerking him awake. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting his IV, asking questions in hushed tones. Marcus returned around midnight, true to his word, and settled onto the vinyl couch with a pillow and blanket the nurses provided. The big man was snoring within minutes, a sound like distant thunder that was oddly comforting. Lily slept fitfully in her chair-turned bed, occasionally crying out in her sleep, nightmares chasing her through the dark hours. Each time Evan would speak softly, "I'm here, baby. I'm right here," until she settled again. Morning came slowly, pale light filtering through the blinds to paint stripes across the linoleum floor. Dr. Okonkwo made her rounds early, examining Evan's shoulder with gentle but thorough hands, pronouncing herself satisfied with his progress. The wound was clean, no signs of infection, vitals stable. Barring complications, he could go home after lunch. Lily woke stiff and cranky, the kind of mood that came from sleeping in a chair and living through trauma. Diane brought them breakfast, real eggs for Lily, more broth for Evan, and announced that he had a visitor waiting if he felt up to it. "Big guy," she said with a meaningful look. "Leather vest. Very polite, but also very insistent." "Ryder." "Send him in," Evan said, then glanced at Marcus, who had woken up and was attempting to finger-comb his hair into something resembling order. "You might want to stick around for this." When Ryder Monroe walked through the door, he seemed to fill the entire room with his presence. He'd cleaned up since yesterday. The leather vest was still there, but he wore fresh jeans and a button-down shirt underneath, his beard neatly trimmed, his gray-shot hair pulled back. In his massive hands, he carried a small bouquet of flowers, daisies and sunflowers, bright and cheerful, and a teddy bear wearing a leather vest that was unmistakably meant for Lily. "Cole," his voice was rough with emotion. "They told me you were awake. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "How do you thank someone for saving your kid's life?" "You don't have to." "I do, though." Ryder set the flowers on the bedside table and held out the teddy bear to Lily, who took it shyly. "Because until you become a parent, you don't understand what it is to love something more than your own life. And yesterday, when that gun swung around, when I saw my baby girl in its sights," his voice cracked. "You didn't hesitate. You didn't think. You just moved. Put yourself between death and my daughter like it was the most natural thing in the world." "Instinct." "Heroism," Ryder corrected. He pulled up a chair, the same one Lily had slept in, and sat down with the careful movements of a big man in a small space. "I've been writing with the Iron Saints for 15 years. Started the chapter myself after I got out of the Navy. We do charity work, fundraisers for veterans, toys for tots at Christmas. We try to be good men, good fathers, good members of our community. And in all that time, I've never seen anything like what you did yesterday." Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm going to take Lily to the cafeteria. Get her some proper breakfast. We'll be back in 30. He ushered a reluctant Lily out, the teddy bear clutched to her chest, leaving Evan alone with the biker president. Ryder waited until the door closed before continuing. "The club took a vote last night. Unanimous. We want to do something for you. Help you out while you're recovering. Make sure you and your girl have everything you need. That's not necessary. Cole, you took a bullet for my daughter, for a kid you'd met 30 seconds before. Do you understand what that means to me, to the club?" Ryder leaned forward, his pale blue eyes intense. "In our world, there's a code. You protect your brothers, you honor your debts. And what you did, that's a debt I can never fully repay. But I'm damn well going to try." Evan shifted uncomfortably, wincing as the movement pulled at his shoulder. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not looking for charity." "It's not charity, it's family." Ryder's voice was firm. "That's what the Saints are, a family. And as of yesterday, you became part of it. Whether you ride or not, whether you wear a cut or not, you're one of us now. Which means if you need something, you call. If someone gives you trouble, you call. If you're struggling to put food on the table or keep the lights on while you can't work, you call. That's what brothers do." The offer was overwhelming in its generosity, and part of Evan wanted to refuse it on principle. He'd been taking care of himself and Lily for 2 years now, hadn't taken handouts, hadn't asked for help beyond what Marcus freely gave. But another part of him, the part that had lain awake at night doing math in his head and wondering how they'd make it through the month, recognized the gift for what it was. Grace, unearned, Unasked for, freely given. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let us help. Say you'll come to the clubhouse when you're healed up and let us buy you a beer. Say you'll bring your girl around so she can play with Maddie. Ryder pulled out his phone, thumb moving across the screen. I'm texting you my number. Anytime, day or night, you need something, you reach out. And speaking of which, he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out an envelope, thick with what looked like cash. The club took up a collection. It's not much, maybe $1,500, but it should help cover what your insurance doesn't and keep you going until you can get back to work. Evan stared at the envelope like it might bite him. I can't accept that. You can and you will, because the alternative is insulting the generosity of 15 guys who think you're a goddamn superhero. Ryder's voice was gentle but unyielding. Cole, I know what it is to be proud. I know what it is to want to handle everything yourself. But pride doesn't feed your daughter. Pride doesn't pay the medical bills. Let us do this. Let us help. It's the only thing that's going to let me sleep at night. The envelope sat between them on the hospital bed, heavy with more than just money, heavy with obligation and gratitude and the strange, powerful bond that forms between men who've shared life or death moments. Finally, Evan reached out with his good hand and took it. Thank you. I'll pay it back when I can. You already paid it in blood, but if it makes you feel better to think of it as a loan, fine. Ryder stood, offering his hand. We're riding by your place tomorrow, around 10 in the morning, just to check on you, make sure you've got everything you need. That okay? Evan shook his hand, feeling the strength in the biker's grip. Yeah, that's okay. After Ryder left, Evan sat alone with the envelope, turning it over in his hands. $1,500. A fortune for someone living paycheck to paycheck. Enough to cover his insurance deductible, buy groceries, maybe even get that rattling sound in the car fixed before it became something catastrophic. He thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she could see him now. She'd always been the brave one, the one who marched into burning buildings, metaphorically speaking, while he hung back and calculated risks. She would have thrown herself in front of that bullet without hesitation. She would have accepted the help with grace and gratitude. So that's what he would do. When Marcus and Lily returned, his daughter sticky with syrup and cheerful again, the resilience of children never ceasing to amaze him, Evan told them about Ryder's visit, about the money, about the promise of help. Marcus nodded approvingly, and Lily wanted to know if she could see Maddie again soon. Soon, Evan promised. Very soon. Dr. Okonkwo discharged him just after noon, as promised, with prescriptions and instructions and stern warnings about taking it easy. Marcus drove them home in his pickup truck. Evan's Civic was still in the coffee shop parking lot and would stay there until someone could retrieve it, with Lily chattering in the back seat about her new teddy bear and whether she could name it Ryder Jr. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted house on Maple Street, 2 bedrooms with barely enough space to turn around in, but it was theirs, and the rent was manageable. Marcus helped Evan up the stairs, a humbling experience that made him realize just how much the injury had taken out of him, and got him settled on the couch while Lily insisted on getting him pillows and blankets and water and anything else she could think of. I'm going to pick up your prescriptions, Marcus said, jingling his keys. You need anything else while I'm out? Peace and quiet, Evan suggested, but he was smiling. Fresh out of that, brother. Back in 30. Alone with Lily, Evan watched her bustle around the apartment, too much energy and nowhere to put it. The shooting had left her wired, anxious in ways she didn't quite understand, needing to be useful to feel safe. He recognized the signs. He'd been the same way after his first firefight in Afghanistan, unable to sit still, needing to do something, anything, to prove he was still alive and functional. Lily, come here. She abandoned her mission to reorganize the bookshelf and climbed up beside him on the couch, careful of his shoulder. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. What happened yesterday was scary, really scary. And it's okay if you feel weird about it, angry or sad or confused. All of those feelings are normal. But I don't want you to be afraid all the time. That man is in jail. He can't hurt anyone anymore. And most people, almost everyone, are good. They're not dangerous. They're not going to hurt you. The bikers are good, she said with certainty. Mr. Ryder is good. Yeah, they are. And so is Marcus, and so are your teachers and your friends, and most of the people in this town. What happened was bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. It doesn't mean the world is a scary place. She thought about this, her small face serious. But it could happen again. It could. Anything could happen. That's life. But we can't spend all our time being afraid of what might happen. We have to live, kiddo. We have to be brave and trust that most days are going to be just regular, boring days where nothing scary happens at all. I like boring days. He laughed, then winced as the movement jarred his shoulder. Me too, baby. Me too. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Marcus returned with medication and Chinese takeout. They watched a movie, and Lily fell asleep against Evan's good side before dinner. When Marcus finally headed home around 8, promising to check in tomorrow, Evan carried Lily to her bed one-handed, a feat of parental gymnastics that left him sweating and shaking. He was tucking her in when she spoke, her voice muzzy with sleep. "Dad? Are the bikers really coming tomorrow?" "That's what Mr. Ryder said." "Good. I want to say thank you." "For what?" "For caring about you. You're always taking care of everyone else. It's nice when someone takes care of you too." Evan kissed her forehead, his throat tight. "Get some sleep, kiddo." In his own bed, sleep came harder despite the exhaustion that dragged at him like chains. His shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, a metronome of pain that the medication only dulled rather than eliminated. He lay in the dark, listening to the familiar sounds of their apartment, the refrigerator's hum, the neighbor's television through thin walls, the distant sound of traffic on Main Street. Tomorrow, Ryder had said, the Iron Saints would come tomorrow. Evan had no idea what that meant, what form their help would take, but as he finally drifted towards sleep, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he and Lily weren't facing the world alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The sound that woke Evan the next morning wasn't his alarm clock, or Lily's footsteps, or even the neighbor's dog that usually started barking around 7. It was thunder, deep, rhythmic, growing steadily louder until the windows rattled in their frames and the whole apartment seemed to vibrate with it. Motorcycles. He checked his phone, 9:47 a.m. Ryder had said 10 o'clock, and apparently bikers took punctuality seriously. Evan hauled himself out of bed, his shoulder screaming protest at the movement, and shuffled to the window that overlooked Maple Street. What he saw made him stop breathing. 12 Harley-Davidsons lined the curb in front of his building, chrome gleaming in the October sunlight, arranged in a formation that spoke of military precision. The Iron Saints stood beside their bikes, all wearing their cuts, those leather vests that marked them as members, covered in patches that told stories Evan didn't yet know how to read. Ryder was at the front, naturally, with Maddie perched on his shoulders. Her purple unicorn dress replaced today with jeans and a tiny leather jacket that made her look like a miniature biker. But it was the sight beyond the motorcycles that made Evan's throat close up. His neighbors had come out. Mrs. Chen from the pharmacy, standing on her porch with a hand over her mouth. The Rodriguez family from downstairs, all 5 kids pressed against the chain-link fence. Old Mr. Patterson, no relation to his boss, sitting in his lawn chair with his oxygen tank beside him, saluting. And more people, streaming out of houses and apartment buildings, drawn by the noise and staying for the spectacle. "Dad!" Lily was suddenly beside him, still in her pajamas, pressing her face against the glass. "Dad, they came! They really came!" "Yeah, kiddo, they really did. Can we go down? Please, please, please?" Evan looked at himself in the mirror by the door. Rumpled t-shirt, pajama pants, 3 days of beard growth, his left arm in the sling that Dr. Okonkwo had insisted on. He looked like a man who'd been shot, which was accurate but not particularly dignified. "Give me 5 minutes to make myself presentable." "Dad, they're bikers. I don't think they care if you're wearing pajamas." She had a point, but Sarah had raised him with standards, and those standards didn't include greeting guests while dressed for bed. He managed to pull on jeans one-handed, a process that took longer and required more cursing than he'd anticipated, and a flannel shirt that he left unbuttoned over his t-shirt because getting his injured arm through a sleeve was beyond his current capabilities. By the time they made it downstairs, a slow process that involved Evan gripping the railing with his good hand and trying not to jostle his shoulder, the crowd on the street had grown. The Iron Saint stood like an honor guard, and when Ryder saw Evan emerge from the building, he lifted Maddie down from his shoulders and stepped forward. "Cole," he said, his voice carrying in the morning air, "how are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," Evan admitted, which got a rumble of appreciative laughter from the assembled bikers. "But I'm standing, so that's something." "That's more than something, brother. That's everything." Ryder gestured to the men behind him. "I brought the club. Figured if we're going to check on you, we might as well make it official. This is Bear." He indicated a massive man with a black beard that hung halfway down his chest. Chains, smoke, preacher, nitro, dice, wrench, tank, joker, shotgun, and you met Redbeard at the coffee shop. Each biker nodded as his road name was called, and Evan tried to commit them to memory, knowing he'd probably mix them up for weeks. They were a diverse crew, different ages, different builds, different backgrounds written in the ink on their arms and the scars on their knuckles. But they all wore the same expression when they looked at him, respect mixed with something deeper, something almost reverent. "We wanted to come by and see if you needed anything," Ryder continued. "Groceries, bills paid, someone to mow your lawn, though I see you don't have a lawn, so scratch that. Point is, we're here, whatever you need." Evan glanced at Lily, who was staring at the motorcycles with naked longing, then at his neighbors, who were watching this entire scene with fascination. Mrs. Chen had her phone out, recording. This was going to be all over Ridgefield by lunchtime. "I appreciate it," Evan said carefully. "I really do. But I don't want to take advantage. Cole." Ryder's voice was gentle but firm. "Let me tell you something about the Saints. We're not just a motorcycle club. We're a brotherhood. And what that means is when one of us is down, the others step up. You might not be wearing a cut, but you're one of us now. You proved that when you took that bullet for my baby girl. So this isn't charity, and it's not pity. It's family taking care of family." One of the other bikers, Tank, Evan thought, built like his namesake, spoke up. "We got a fund set up at the club. Everyone's been dropping in what they can. Figure between that and what Ryder gave you yesterday, you should be covered for a couple months at least. More than that if you're smart with it," added another voice. Preacher, older than the others, with gray in his beard and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "My wife's a financial advisor. She'd be happy to help you budget it out. Make sure you're not stressing about money while you heal." Evan felt the weight of their generosity like a physical thing, pressing down on him. He'd been raised to be self-sufficient, to handle his own problems, to never owe anyone anything he couldn't immediately repay. But he'd also been raised to recognize grace when it was offered, and to accept it with humility. "Thank you," he said, and his voice cracked on the second word. "I don't know how to repay this." "You already did," Ryder said simply. "But if you want to make us happy, there is one thing you could do." "Name it." Ryder glanced down at Maddie, then over at Lily, who was still mesmerized by the motorcycles. "Let us take your girl to school tomorrow. Give her an escort she'll never forget. Show everyone in this town that she's got family, a whole lot of family, watching her back." Evan followed Ryder's gaze to Lily, saw the way her eyes lit up at the mention of the motorcycles, the way she clutched her teddy bear with the leather vest like it was the most precious thing in the world. She'd been through hell in the past 48 hours, had watched her father get shot, had sat in a hospital not knowing if she'd be orphaned. She deserved something special, something that would turn this nightmare into a story she could tell with pride instead of trauma. "She'd love that," Evan said. "But are you sure? That's a lot of bikes for one little girl." "Brother, we'd bring the whole chapter if we had them, 50 bikes if necessary, but 12 will do just fine." Ryder crouched down so he was eye level with Lily. "What do you say, little miss? Want to ride to school with us tomorrow? You'll still go in your dad's car, but we'll be all around you, making sure you get there safe and sound." Lily looked at Evan, seeking permission, her eyes huge with hope and excitement. "Can I, Dad? Really?" "Really, but you have to promise me you'll behave and listen to your teacher. This is a special thing, not an excuse to show off. I promise I'll be so good, the best ever." She turned back to Ryder. "Can Maddie come too?" Maddie, who'd been hiding slightly behind her father's leg, peeked out and nodded shyly. "We're going to the same school now. Daddy enrolled me yesterday." This was news to Evan. You're transferring her to Ridgefield Elementary? Her old school was across town, 20-minute drive each way. Didn't make sense when there's a good school right here. Ryder stood, ruffling his daughter's hair. Plus, I figure the girls should stick together. They've been through something most kids never will. Might as well let them be friends. What? The practical part of Evan's brain noted the logic, but another part, the part that was still adjusting to the idea of being enmeshed with a motorcycle club, wondered if Ryder's decision had less to do with convenience and more to do with keeping their daughters close, creating ties that would bind their families together. Either way, Lily was practically vibrating with excitement, and Maddie was smiling for the first time since Evan had seen her. Then it's settled, Ryder declared. Tomorrow morning, we ride. Be ready by 7:30. We'll form up here on Maple Street and escort you both to school. It'll be a morning this town talks about for years. One of the other bikers, Wrench, distinguished by the literal wrench tattooed on his forearm, stepped forward. Cole, I noticed your Civic's still at the morning grind. Want me to grab it for you? I can have Chains follow me in his truck, bring it back here. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Keys in it or you got them here? Evan retrieved his keys from the apartment, still marveling at how quickly the Saints had inserted themselves into his life, how efficiently they'd identified problems and offered solutions before he even had to ask. It was overwhelming and comforting in equal measure. While Wrench and Chains departed on their errand, the other bikers dispersed into purposeful activity. Bear somehow produced tools from his saddlebags and started tightening the loose railing on Evan's front steps that had been wobbling for 6 months. Preacher struck up a conversation with Mrs. Chen about her garden, complimenting the chrysanthemums. Tank and Joker were showing the Rodriguez kids how to properly sit on a Harley parked and off, but the children were enthralled. Ryder remained with Evan, watching his club work with obvious pride. This is what we do, he explained, community service. Half the reason we ride is to show people that bikers aren't all the stereotype. We're fathers and veterans and working men. We coach Little League and volunteer at food banks. The leather and the loud pipes, that's just how we dress. Underneath, we're just guys trying to be good. You're succeeding, Evan said, watching Bear work with meticulous care on the railing, testing each bolt twice. We try. Lost my wife 3 years ago. Cancer, same as yours. Maddie was 4, barely understood what was happening. The club got me through it, showed up at the house, helped with everything, cooking, cleaning, watching Maddie while I fell apart. Preacher sat with me for 3 days straight when I didn't trust myself to be alone. That's what brothers do. The parallel between their lives wasn't lost on Evan. 2 widowers, 2 young daughters, 2 men trying to navigate single fatherhood while carrying wounds that went deeper than flesh. How do you do it? He asked quietly. How do you keep going when half of you is gone? Ryder was quiet for a moment, watching Maddie and Lily giggle together over something on Lily's phone. You find reasons. She's mine. He nodded toward Maddie. Every morning I wake up and see her face, and I remember why I'm still here, why I have to keep going, and you surround yourself with people who understand. The club saved my life, Cole. Let it help save yours too. I'm not a biker. Neither was Preacher when he first started hanging around. He was an insurance adjuster who liked motorcycles. Now he's our chaplain and the glue that holds this crazy family together. Ryder turned to face Evan fully. You don't have to ride to be family. You don't have to wear a cut or get patched in. But you're welcome if you want it. We've got a clubhouse on Route 9 outside town. Come by sometime. Have a beer. Meet the other families. Let Lily and Maddie play while the adults pretend we have our lives together. The invitation was genuine, and Evan found himself nodding before he'd fully processed the decision. I'd like that. When I'm healed up. Good man. Ryder clapped him on the good shoulder, careful to avoid the injured side. Now, I'm going to level with you about tomorrow. The school escort isn't just about giving the girls a cool story. It's about sending a message. What kind of message? That Lily Cole is protected. That anyone who even thinks about messing with her will answer to the Iron Saints. Kids can be cruel, Cole. They talk. And by now, everyone in town knows what happened at the morning grind. Some of them are going to think it's cool, others are going to be scared or say stupid things. But when Lily shows up with 12 Harleys as an escort, everyone's going to know she's got family, real family, the kind that doesn't abandon their own. Evan understood the unspoken implications. This wasn't just about Lily. It was about Maddie, too. Both girls had been traumatized by the shooting, had seen violence and chaos most children never witnessed. The escort was armor, a public declaration that would shield them from whispers and questions and the casual cruelty of playground politics. You've thought this through. I've thought about nothing else since I watched you take that bullet. You gave me my daughter's life. The least I can do is give yours a little peace of mind. Mrs. Chen had migrated from her porch to the sidewalk, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. She approached with the confident stride of someone who'd lived in Ridgefield for 40 years and considered everyone in town her business. "Evan Cole, you're a hero," she announced without preamble. "The whole town's talking about it. What you did, that was something special." "I just reacted, Mrs. Chen. You saved a child. A stranger's child. That's not just reacting, that's character." She turned to Ryder, sizing him up with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "And you're the father?" "Yes, ma'am, Ryder Monroe. My daughter Maddie is the one your neighbor saved." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "She's beautiful. You must have been terrified." "More than I can express." Ryder's voice was thick. "Still am, every time I think about what could have happened if Cole hadn't been there." "Well, you boys take care of each other, you hear? This town needs more men like you, both of you." She patted Evan's good arm. "You need anything from the pharmacy, you call me. I'll deliver it personally, no charge." After she left, a parade of neighbors followed. The Rodriguez family brought over a casserole. Mr. Patterson insisted on shaking Evan's hand, his grip surprisingly strong for a man on oxygen. The couple from the second floor, young professionals Evan had barely spoken to, offered to help with groceries or errands. Even the teenager from across the street, usually glued to his phone and oblivious to the world, stopped to say he thought what Evan did was totally badass. The attention was exhausting and heartwarming in equal measure. Evan had lived in this building for 2 years, had nodded politely to neighbors but never really connected, too wrapped up in his own grief and struggle to reach out. Now suddenly, he was the center of a community he hadn't realized existed. By noon, the Iron Saints had accomplished more than Evan would have managed in a month. His car was returned, Wrench reporting that it started fine, but really did need some work on the engine. He'd be happy to look at it next weekend. No charge. The railing was fixed. Bear had somehow also repaired the loose shutter on Evan's bedroom window and tightened all the door hinges that had been sticking. The apartment itself had been restocked. Preacher's wife had apparently taken Lily shopping while Evan was distracted, and his refrigerator now contained actual food instead of the mustard and questionable leftovers that had been its primary residence. "This is too much," Evan protested weakly as Preacher helped him put away groceries with his one functional arm. "This is family," Preacher corrected. His voice had the gentle authority of someone used to counseling and comforting. "And before you argue, let me tell you something. 3 years ago, my house burned down. Electrical fire. Lost everything. The club showed up the next day with trucks full of furniture, clothes, everything we needed to start over. Ryder personally rebuilt my daughter's bedroom, spent 2 weeks on it to get it perfect. That's what we do. We catch each other when we fall. But I didn't fall. I got shot. Same difference. You're down. We're here to help you up. Simple as that." Preacher closed the refrigerator, studying Evan with those kind, assessing eyes. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see a man who's been carrying the world on his shoulders for too long, who lost his wife and decided he had to do everything alone because asking for help felt like failing. Am I close?" Evan's throat tightened. "Yeah, pretty close. I was the same way. Drove myself half crazy trying to be Superman, trying to prove I didn't need anyone. Then my house burned down, and I had no choice but to accept help. Best thing that ever happened to me, in a weird way. Taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to lean on people who love you. I barely know you guys. You will. That's the beauty of it. You've got time to get to know us, to become part of this family. And in the meantime, you let us help. You focus on healing and taking care of your daughter. We'll handle the rest." By the time the Iron Saints finally departed in the late afternoon, engines roaring to life in a symphony of chrome and thunder, Evan felt like he'd lived a week in a single day. Lily was practically glowing, having spent hours with Maddie and the other bikers, soaking up attention and storing up memories she'd carry forever. As the last motorcycle disappeared around the corner, Evan sank onto his couch with a wince, his shoulder reminding him that he'd been on his feet too long. Lily climbed up beside him, careful of his injury, and leaned her head against his good side. "Dad, this is the best day ever." He kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, kiddo, it really is." That evening, Marcus stopped by with pizza and found them on the couch, watching a nature documentary about penguins. He took one look at the cleaned apartment, the full refrigerator, the fixed railing visible through the window, and whistled low. "The Saints came through, huh?" Like a tornado made of good intentions and motorcycle grease. Evan accepted a slice of pepperoni. "It's overwhelming, Marcus. They barely know me, and they're treating me like family," Marcus finished, "because that's what you are to them now. You took a bullet for one of their own. In their world, in our world." He gestured between himself and Evan, veterans both. "That means something. That creates a bond that doesn't break." "I'm not used to owing people." "Then get used to it. Because those guys aren't going away, and fighting them on it is just going to make everyone miserable." Marcus grabbed his own slice. "Besides, tomorrow's going to be something special. 12 bikes escorting Lily to school? That's movie stuff right there. She's going to remember that for the rest of her life." Lily, hearing her name, looked up from the penguins. "Uncle Marcus, you should see the motorcycles. They're so shiny, and they're so loud. And Mr. Ryder said I can sit on his bike when he's not riding it, just to see how it feels." "That's pretty cool, kiddo. And Maddie's going to be in my class. We're going to be best friends. She said so." Marcus caught Evan's eye over Lily's head, and something passed between them. Recognition that this moment, this connection, was exactly what both girls needed. Healing through friendship, trauma transformed into bond. After Marcus left and Lily was in bed, falling asleep almost instantly, exhausted from excitement, Evan sat alone in the dark living room, his shoulder aching despite the pain medication. He pulled out his phone and found Ryder's number in his messages, typed out a text. "Thank you for everything today. You and the Saints, I don't have words for what it means." The response came quickly. "No thanks needed, brother. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be one for the books." Evan set down his phone and closed his eyes, letting the events of the day wash over him. 2 days ago, he'd been an anonymous single dad, struggling to make ends meet, going through life with his head down and his walls up. Now he was connected to a brotherhood he'd never sought, tied to men who'd claimed him as their own because of one moment of instinct and courage. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. He thought about Sarah, wondered what she'd make of all this. She'd probably laugh at the irony, her cautious, calculated husband somehow ending up adopted by a motorcycle club. But she'd also be proud, he knew. Proud that he'd protected a child. Proud that he was letting people help. Proud that Lily was smiling again, excited about something instead of just going through the motions of childhood. Sleep came easier that night, despite the pain. And when the alarm went off at 6:30 the next morning, earlier than usual because Ryder had said to be ready by 7:30, Evan felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt anticipation, excitement, the sense that the day ahead held something extraordinary. Lily was already awake, bouncing around her room in the unicorn dress she'd insisted on wearing. "Is it time? Are they coming?" "Soon, kiddo. Let's get you some breakfast first." They ate quickly, cereal for her, toast for him, neither of them able to manage much through the nervous energy. Evan had managed to shower one-handed and put on clean clothes, though buttoning his shirt remained an impossible task, and he'd had to settle for another t-shirt and flannel combination. His arm was still in the sling, his shoulder still throbbing, but the pain was manageable as long as he didn't move too quickly. At 7:20, the first rumble of engines echoed down Maple Street. Evan and Lily hurried to the window and watched as the Iron Saints assembled once again, this time joined by several more bikes. Evan counted 18 total, more than Ryder had promised. They formed up in 2 neat columns, creating a corridor between them, and Ryder dismounted from his lead bike to walk to Evan's building. "Morning," he called up to the window. "You two ready for this?" Evan grabbed his keys and helped Lily into her jacket, the bright yellow one that marked her as his, as precious, as protected. They made their way downstairs to find half the street had turned out again, neighbors emerging with coffee cups and phones, ready to witness and record. Maddie was already there, standing beside Ryder's bike in her own leather jacket and jeans, looking every inch like a biker's daughter. When she saw Lily, her face lit up, and the two girls crashed together in a hug that spoke of shared trauma and nascent friendship. "The plan is simple," Ryder explained, his voice carrying easily over the idling engines. "You drive your car with Lily. We'll form up around you, 6 bikes in front, 6 behind, 3 on each side. We'll take the main roads, nothing fancy, just a straight shot to the school. Should take about 15 minutes. Everyone in town is going to see this, and that's the point. Questions? What about at the school? We'll peel off before we get to the parking lot. Don't want to cause too much chaos. But we'll be visible, trust me. The principal's been notified, by the way. Called him personally to explain he's fine with it." Of course, Ryder had called the principal. The man thought of everything. Evan got Lily buckled into the back seat of his Civic, which looked even more pathetic than usual, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of customized motorcycles. But as he started the engine, and it actually started without the concerning rattle, thank you, wrench, the Saints fired up around him in a coordinated symphony that shook the ground. It was the most beautiful, terrifying sound Evan had ever heard. Ryder took point on his massive Road King, Maddie secured in a custom seat behind him with her arms wrapped around her father's waist. He raised one hand, made a forward motion, and the procession began to move. 18 Harley-Davidsons and 1 beat-up Civic rolled down Maple Street like a parade, and Evan felt tears prick his eyes at the sheer overwhelming magnitude of it. Neighbors cheered from porches. Someone had hung a banner, "Evan Cole, Hero," across Mrs. Chen's pharmacy. Kids waved from sidewalks. In the rearview mirror, he could see Lily's face pressed against the window, her eyes huge, her smile so wide it looked like it might crack her face in half. This moment, right here, was erasing the trauma of the shooting, replacing terror with wonder, fear with joy. They turned onto Main Street, and the procession grew even more dramatic. Traffic stopped. People emerged from shops to watch and wave. Someone, he would never know who, had already posted about it on social media because phones were everywhere, capturing video, taking photos, documenting this moment when a small Ohio town witnessed something extraordinary. The morning grind came into view, and Evan's hands tightened on the wheel, remembering. But Cheryl was outside, standing on the sidewalk with her entire morning shift, and they applauded as the motorcycles rumbled past. The message was clear. Heroism deserved recognition. Sacrifice deserved honor. Ridgefield Elementary appeared ahead, a brick building with a playground full of equipment that had seen better days. Parents were dropping off kids, the usual morning chaos of backpacks and lunchboxes and hurried goodbyes. But everything stopped when the Iron Saints arrived. True to his word, Ryder signaled for the motorcycles to peel off a block from school, the formation breaking apart with practiced precision. But they didn't leave. They lined up along the street, engines still running, creating a wall of leather and chrome and loyalty. Evan pulled into a parking spot with hands that shook slightly. This was it. The moment when his daughter would walk into school with the entire student body watching, marked forever as the girl with a story, the girl with protection, the girl whose father took a bullet and earned the respect of men who looked like they could break the world in half. He helped Lily out of the car, and Ryder was there with Maddie, both girls holding hands, both faces shining with excitement and nerves. "Ready?" Ryder asked. Lily nodded, though she squeezed Evan's hand hard enough to hurt. Together, Evan with his arm in a sling, Ryder in full biker regalia, and 2 little girls in unicorn dresses and leather jackets, they walked toward the school entrance. Behind them, the Iron Saints revved their engines once in unison, a roar of approval and blessing. The principal was waiting at the door, a middle-aged man named Dr. Harrison, who'd always been kind but distant. Now he extended his hand to Evan with genuine warmth. "Mr. Cole, what you did, the whole town's talking about it. We're honored to have someone of your character in our school community." "Thank you, sir. You saved a child. Don't diminish that." Dr. Harrison turned to Ryder. "Mr. Monroe, thank you for the call yesterday. And thank you for this," he gestured to the motorcycles, "display. I think it sends exactly the right message about community and protection." That's the goal, Doc. Lily and Maddie were already being mobbed by other children, all wanting to know about the motorcycles, the shooting, the story that had turned them into celebrities overnight. Evan watched his daughter handle the attention with surprising grace, explaining patiently, introducing Maddie as her new best friend, turning tragedy into connection. As parents and teachers ushered children into classrooms, Evan lingered at the entrance with Ryder, neither man quite ready to leave. "Thank you," Evan said finally, "for all of this, for making something beautiful out of something horrible. That's what we do, Cole. We take the broken things and we fix them. Bikes, lives, whatever needs mending." Ryder extended his hand. "This isn't goodbye, you understand. This is just the beginning. You're part of the family now, and family shows up for each other." They shook hands, and Evan felt the weight and warmth of that grip, felt the promise contained in it. This strange, fierce brotherhood had claimed him, and whether he'd sought it or not, he was grateful for it. The Iron Saints departed in a final thunderous procession, leaving Evan standing alone in the school parking lot, watching his daughter through the window as she settled into her classroom seat beside Maddie, both girls giggling over something only they understood. He touched his shoulder gently, feeling the ache beneath the bandages, feeling the weight of what he'd done and what it had cost and what it had earned. A bullet scar and a brotherhood, pain and protection, sacrifice and salvation. It seemed like a fair trade. As he walked back to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Just saw the video. You and Lily are famous. Also, I'm pretty sure you're officially a saint now, whether you wear the patch or not." Evan smiled, typed back, "Pretty sure you're right." And as he drove home through streets that suddenly felt less lonely, less overwhelming, less impossible to navigate, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he and Lily were going to be okay. Better than okay. They were going to thrive. The video went viral by lunchtime. Evan didn't know about it at first. He'd spent the morning attempting one-handed household tasks with varying degrees of failure and eventually giving up to watch television with his arm elevated like Dr. Okonkwo had instructed. But his phone started buzzing around noon with texts from numbers he didn't recognize, messages from people he'd gone to high school with and hadn't spoken to in 15 years, notifications from social media platforms he barely used. Marcus called first. "Brother, you need to check Facebook right now, like immediately." "Why? What happened?" "Just do it. I'll wait." Evan fumbled his phone to the Facebook app, something he opened maybe once a month to see pictures of other people's vacations and political arguments, and found his feed completely transformed. The top post, shared by what looked like half of Ridgefield, was a video titled "Hero Dad Gets Motorcycle Escort After Taking Bullet for Stranger's Child." He pressed play with his thumb and watched himself from a neighbor's perspective, his beat-up Civic surrounded by gleaming Harleys rolling down Main Street like a presidential motorcade. The video had been taken from someone's second-floor window, capturing the full scope of the procession. 18 motorcycles in formation, engines rumbling, Evan's car at the center like something precious being protected. You could see faces in windows along Main Street, people stopping on sidewalks to watch and wave, the sheer unexpected beauty of it all. The video had 73,000 views. In Ridgefield, Ohio, population 43,000. "Marcus," Evan said weakly, "this is going national probably. Local news picked it up an hour ago. They're calling you the Ridgefield hero. Channel 7 wants an interview, so does Channel 4. And some producer from Good Morning America's production team left you a voicemail. Check your messages." Evan felt his chest tighten. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to heal up and get back to work." "Too late, brother. You're a story now. Human interest, feel good, restoration of faith in humanity story. In a world full of bad news, you're the guy who took a bullet for someone else's kid and got adopted by a motorcycle club. That's gold." Marcus paused. "But listen, you don't have to do any of it if you don't want to. You can ignore the calls, stay off social media, wait for everyone to move on to the next thing. It's your choice." Was it, though? Evan scrolled through the comments under the video. Hundreds of them. Thousands probably by now. People calling him a hero, a saint, an example of everything good about small-town America. People sharing their own stories of loss and sacrifice. People thanking him for restoring their belief that good people still existed. But there were other comments too. Questions about the Iron Saints, about whether a biker gang should be that close to a school. Speculation about Evan's motives, cynical voices suggesting this was staged for attention or money. A few truly vicious posts claiming he'd endangered his own daughter by his reckless heroics. He closed the app before he could read more. Sarah had always said that reading internet comments was like drinking poison. It might satisfy some dark curiosity, but it would absolutely make you sick. I'm not doing interviews, Evan decided. Not now. Maybe not ever. This isn't about me. It's exactly about you, Marcus countered gently. But I get it. You want to process this privately. That's fair. Just be prepared. Ridgefield's a small town. Everyone's going to know your face now. Everyone's going to have an opinion. After they hung up, Evan sat in the silence of his apartment, feeling the weight of sudden visibility like a physical thing pressing down on his shoulders. He'd spent 2 years trying to be invisible, to blend in, to not draw attention to his struggles or his grief. And now, because of one instinctive choice in a coffee shop, he was exposed to the world. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Ryder. Saw the video. You okay? Evan typed back with one hand. Overwhelmed. Didn't expect this. Nobody ever does. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Fame. Silver lining, the Saints are getting great press. Haven't seen this much positive attention for a MC since that club in New York saved those kids from a fire. You need anything? You call. And hey, ignore the assholes in the comments. They weren't there. They don't know. The fact that Ryder had also been reading comments made Evan feel slightly better. Misery loved company, even digital misery. The afternoon crawled by. Evan tried to nap but couldn't settle, his mind racing with thoughts of cameras and questions and the inevitable moment when some reporter would dig into his past and find out about his discharge from the Army. Honorable, but complicated by PTSD and the therapy that had followed. Would they make that part of the story? Would they paint him as damaged goods playing hero, or would they have the decency to leave his medical history private? When 3 o'clock came, school dismissal time, Evan was parked outside Ridgefield Elementary 15 minutes early, despite the pain in his shoulder and Marcus's warnings about overdoing it. He needed to see Lily, needed to make sure the day had been okay, that the attention hadn't been too much. Other parents were already gathering, and Evan felt their eyes on him immediately. Some waved and smiled. Others stared with open curiosity. A few approached his car, knocking on the window with well-meaning but intrusive questions. Mr. Cole? I'm Jenny's mom. We just wanted to say what you did was so brave. Is it true the bikers gave you money? Someone said they gave you money. My son wants to know if you're going to join the motorcycle club. Evan answered politely, but vaguely, feeling trapped in his car, grateful when the school doors finally opened and children poured out like a dam breaking. He spotted Lily immediately, that yellow jacket, that dark ponytail, but she wasn't alone. Maddie was beside her, holding hands, and they were surrounded by at least a dozen other kids, all talking at once. Lily's face when she spotted him was pure relief. She broke free from the crowd and ran to the car, yanking open the door and climbing in with the kind of urgency that told Evan everything he needed to know about how her day had gone. Drive, Dad. Just drive. He drove, pulling out of the parking lot while Lily buckled herself in and pressed her face against the window, waving at Maddie, who was being collected by Ryder on his motorcycle. The biker had arrived just as they were leaving, drawing more stares and phone cameras. That bad? Evan asked once they were a few blocks away. Not bad exactly, just a lot. Everyone wanted to know about the shooting and the motorcycles and if I was scared and if you were okay and if Maddie was my best friend now and if the bikers were like a gang and a million other questions. She slumped in her seat. I'm tired, Dad. My face hurts from smiling. Evan understood that completely. You did good, kiddo. Handled it like a champ. But I think tomorrow we keep it low-key. No motorcycle escorts, just a normal school day. Sound good? Sounds perfect. She was quiet for a moment, then, Dad? Some of the kids said you're famous now, are you? I don't think so. People are just interested in the story because it's unusual. It'll blow over in a few days. Mrs. Patterson, my teacher, she said what you did was heroic. She made the whole class talk about heroes and what makes someone brave. It was actually pretty cool, even though it was weird that she was talking about my dad. What did you say when she asked about heroes? Lily thought about it. I said heroes are people who help others even when it's scary, and that you were scared, but you did it anyway, because that's what brave means. Being scared, but doing it anyway. Evan's throat closed up. Out of the mouths of babes came wisdom that adults spent lifetimes trying to articulate. That's exactly right, Lily. That's exactly what it means. When they got home, Marcus was waiting on the front steps with takeout bags from Chen's diner and a six-pack of beer, the good kind local craft brew that cost too much but tasted like actual beer instead of watered-down nothing. Figured you'd need this, he said, holding up the bags. Comfort food and adult beverages. Lily, I got you the chicken fingers you like and enough fries to feed a small army. They ate on the couch with the television on, but the sound low, just background noise while they decompressed from the day. Lily told them stories about school, about Maddie being shy at first, but warming up by lunch, about the boys who wanted to arm wrestle her because her dad was tough, about the teacher who'd assigned an essay on everyday heroes that was clearly inspired by recent events. I'm going to write about you, Lily announced, dragging a French fry through ketchup. But also about Mommy, because she was a hero too, taking care of sick people even when she was getting sick herself. Evan had to look away, blinking hard. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder, the good one, and changed the subject to football, giving Evan time to compose himself. After dinner, after Lily had been tucked into bed with her teddy bear and her nightlight, and the promise that tomorrow would be quieter, Evan and Marcus sat on the small balcony that overlooked the parking lot, drinking beer in companionable silence. "You doing okay?" Marcus asked finally. "And I mean really okay, not the tough guy okay you tell everyone else." Evan rotated his beer bottle in his good hand, watching condensation drip down the glass. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me feels like I did the right thing, like I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But another part keeps thinking about what could have happened. If that bullet had been 2 inches to the right, Lily would be an orphan. What kind of father risks that? The kind who sees a child in danger and acts on instinct. The kind who can't not help." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You know what your problem is? You're overthinking it. You're trying to logic your way through something that happened in 2 seconds on pure instinct. There was no time for cost-benefit analysis. There was just a gun and a kid and you." "I keep seeing it," Evan admitted quietly. The gun swinging around, Maddie's face, the way everything slowed down and sped up at the same time. It plays on loop in my head. "That's normal. That's trauma. You should probably talk to someone about it. Professional someone, not just me." Marcus took a long pull from his beer. "You've been through hell, brother. Lost your wife, raised your daughter alone, got shot saving someone else's kid. That's a lot of weight to carry. Nobody expects you to just shrug it off." "The VA therapist I saw after Sarah died, she retired last year. I haven't found a new one." "So find one. Use some of that money the Saints gave you and invest in your mental health. Because Lily needs you healthy, and you can't be healthy if you're carrying all this alone." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "I know you, Evan. You're going to try to tough it out. Tell yourself you're fine. Push through until you break. Don't do that. Not this time." They sat in silence for a while. The October night cool but not cold. The distant sound of traffic on Main Street like white noise. Evan thought about Sarah, about the conversations they'd had on this same balcony when she was alive, planning futures that would never come to pass. She'd been the one who always pushed him to deal with his feelings, to talk instead of bottle things up. She'd have agreed with Marcus 100%. "I'll look into it," Evan said finally. "Find a new therapist. Deal with this properly." "Good man." Marcus stood, stretching. "I'm heading out. You need me? You call. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. and you're having a panic attack. You call." After Marcus left, Evan checked on Lily one more time. She was deeply asleep, one arm wrapped around her teddy bear, her face peaceful in the way only sleeping children managed. He watched her breathe for a moment, this miracle of a human he'd helped create, this person who contained half of Sarah's DNA and all of his hope for the future. She was worth every risk, every bullet, every moment of pain and fear and uncertainty. The next morning came with blessed normalcy. No motorcycles, no cameras. Just Evan and Lily in their usual routine, cereal and orange juice, backpack check, the drive to school in their unremarkable Civic. A few parents waved, but nobody swarmed them. The principal nodded from the doorway, but there was no speech, no fanfare. Lily kissed his cheek before climbing out. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, kiddo. Have a good day." He watched her run to meet Maddie at the entrance, the two girls immediately falling into animated conversation, and felt something loosen in his chest. This was good. This was normal. This was healing. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Evan's shoulder improved gradually, the sharp pain giving way to a dull ache, then to occasional twinges. He attended physical therapy 3 times a week with a therapist named Rita, who had no patience for his attempts to skip exercises or push too hard too fast. He found a new counselor, Dr. Sarah Chen. Yes, another Sarah, which felt like a sign, who specialized in trauma and grief and helped him process both the shooting and the deeper wound of losing his wife. The Iron Saints remained constant. Ryder stopped by twice a week, usually bringing Maddie so the girls could play while the men talked about everything and nothing: parenthood, loss, the difficulty of moving forward when part of you wanted to stay frozen in the past. Other saints appeared at random intervals: Preacher to check on his spiritual well-being, Bear to fix things that weren't quite broken, but soon would be, Wrench to tinker with his car and eventually replace the transmission with one he'd found for cheap. The club invited Evan to the clubhouse on Route 9 for a Saturday barbecue when he was 6 weeks into recovery. He brought Lily, nervous about exposing her to what he still half expected to be a rough environment, despite all evidence to the contrary. What he found instead was families, wives and girlfriends and children, a playground in the backyard, a bounce house that had seen better days but still functioned. The Iron Saints weren't criminals cosplaying as fathers. They were fathers who happened to ride motorcycles and wear leather. Lily disappeared immediately with Maddie and a pack of other kids, and Evan found himself pulled into conversations with men who understood what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, to struggle. They didn't treat him like a hero. They treated him like a brother, which somehow meant more. Ryder found him near the grill, watching Preacher's wife flip burgers with the expertise of someone who'd fed crowds before. "You fitting in okay?" "Better than expected," Evan admitted. "I thought I'd feel out of place, but this is just normal, family stuff." That's the point. We're not trying to be something we're not. We ride because we love it, but at the end of the day, we're just guys trying to be good fathers and good men. Ryder handed him a beer. "I wanted to ask you something, and you can absolutely say no, but how would you feel about becoming an honorary member?" Evan blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you're part of the family officially. You get your name on the clubhouse wall, you're invited to all events, you've got the full protection and support of the Saints. But you don't have to ride if you don't want to, don't have to prospect or get patched in or any of the formal stuff. Just, you're one of us. Officially." "I don't ride," Evan pointed out. "Neither does Preacher's wife, and she's an honorary. It's not about the bike, it's about the bond." Ryder's eyes were serious. "You saved my daughter, Cole. That makes you family. This just makes it official." Evan thought about the past 6 weeks, the help he'd received, the friendship, the way the Saints had shown up for him and Lily without being asked, without expecting anything in return except the chance to help. He thought about community, about belonging, about the way humans were meant to live in tribes, and how he'd been trying to go it alone for far too long. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I'd be honored." Ryder's face split into a grin. "Outstanding. We'll do a little ceremony at the next club meeting. Nothing crazy, just the president officially welcoming you into the fold. You don't have to wear a cut or anything unless you want to, but you'll have the Saints behind you for life." The ceremony happened 2 weeks later in the clubhouse, with all the Saints present and Lily in attendance as witness. It was simple but moving. Ryder spoke about courage and brotherhood, about the bonds that form when people look beyond themselves to protect others. He presented Evan with a plaque that read Honorary Iron Saint, Evan Cole, for extraordinary courage, and a leather bracelet stamped with the club's emblem. Afterward, every single member came up to shake his hand or hug him, welcoming him properly into the family. Preacher gave him a Bible with a handwritten note inside, for when you need reminding that you're not alone. Bear gave him a Swiss Army knife that had definitely seen combat. Tank gave him a 6-pack of his home-brewed beer and warned him it was strong enough to strip paint. Lily watched it all with shining eyes, and when they got home that night, she asked if this meant they had a big family now. Yeah, kiddo, I think it does. Good. I like having uncles, even if they're loud and ride motorcycles. Especially because they ride motorcycles, Evan corrected, ruffling her hair. By the time October gave way to November, Evan's shoulder had healed enough for him to return to work part-time. His supervisor, Patterson, had held his job. Something Evan suspected had less to do with company generosity and more to do with the fact that the Iron Saints had made it clear that letting Evan go would be bad for business. The crew welcomed him back with gentle hazing and offers to handle any heavy lifting, and it felt good to be useful again, to be earning a paycheck instead of relying on the Saints' generosity. The video had mostly faded from public consciousness, replaced by newer viral moments, fresher stories, but its effects lingered. Evan was recognized occasionally in town, usually by tourists who'd seen the story, but most Ridgefield residents had moved on to treating him like a regular person again. The local paper had done a follow-up piece focused on the Iron Saints community service, which helped counter some of the negative biker gang stereotypes. Life wasn't perfect. Evan still had nightmares sometimes, still saw that gun swinging around in his sleep. His shoulder ached when it rained, and Dr. Okonkwo said it probably always would. Scar tissue, permanent damage, the price of heroism written in his bones. Money was still tight, though the Saints Fund had bought him breathing room, and his return to work meant regular paychecks again. But there was something new, too. Something he hadn't felt in the 2 years since Sarah died. Hope. The sense that the future might hold good things, that he and Lily weren't just surviving, but potentially thriving. He had friends now, real friends, not just casual acquaintances. He had community. He had purpose beyond just making it through another day. One Saturday in mid-November, Ryder showed up at Evan's apartment with an unexpected proposal. "I've been thinking," he said, sitting at Evan's kitchen table with coffee. "You saved my kid's life. I want to teach you to ride." Evan laughed. "Ryder, I appreciate it, but I can't afford a motorcycle. Even a used one is not asking you to buy anything. I've got an extra bike in my garage, a Sportster, good beginner bike. You can borrow it while you learn. If you decide you like it and want to keep riding, we'll figure something out. If you hate it, no harm done." "Why is this important to you?" Ryder was quiet for a moment, his big hands wrapped around the coffee mug that looked tiny in his grip. "Because riding saved my life after my wife died. Gave me something to focus on, a way to process grief without words. The road, the wind, the machine, it's meditative, healing, and I think you need that. I think you need something that's just yours, not about being a father or a worker or a hero. Just you and a bike and the open road." Evan thought about it. He'd never ridden before, had always been vaguely intimidated by motorcycles. But he trusted Ryder, trusted that the man wouldn't steer him wrong. And the idea of having something that was just his, something that wasn't about responsibility or obligation, that was appealing. "Okay," he said, "teach me." The lessons started the following weekend. Ryder was patient but exacting, teaching Evan the mechanics first, how a motorcycle worked, how to maintain it, respect for the machine, and what it could do. Then came the parking lot practice, balance, clutch control, shifting, stopping. Evan dropped the bike twice in the first hour and wanted to quit. Ryder just helped him pick it up and told him every rider had dropped their bike learning. It's part of the process. You fall, you get back on, just like life. By the third lesson, something clicked. Evan felt the bike respond to him, felt the connection between his body and the machine. By the fifth lesson, Ryder declared him ready for real roads, empty country lanes at first, then gradually busier streets. And by the eighth lesson, Evan experienced what Ryder had promised, that sense of meditation, of focus, of everything else falling away until there was just the road and the wind and the rumble of the engine. It was freedom. It was therapy. It was exactly what he hadn't known he needed. In early December, with Christmas approaching and the first snow threatening, Evan completed what Ryder called his graduation ride, a 30-mile loop through the countryside, just the two of them, testing Evan's skills on hills and curves and varying road conditions. When they pulled back into Ryder's driveway, both men grinning despite the cold, Ryder killed his engine and said, You're a rider now, Cole. Official. I still can't afford to buy the bike. Consider it a loan. Pay me back whenever you can, or don't. Either way, it's yours to use. Ryder dismounted, stretching his back. Besides, can't have an honorary Iron Saint who doesn't ride. It's bad for the image. That night, Evan told Lily about the riding lessons, about how he was learning something new. She was skeptical at first. You're going to ride a motorcycle? You always said they were dangerous. But when he explained how careful he was being, how Ryder was teaching him properly, she softened. Does this mean you're going to wear a leather jacket and grow a beard? Maybe the jacket. Definitely not the beard. Good. The beard would be weird. 2 weeks before Christmas, the Iron Saints organized a toy drive at the clubhouse, an annual tradition where they collected presents for underprivileged kids in Ridgefield. Evan brought Lily to help sort donations, and she threw herself into the work with the enthusiasm of a child who understood what it meant to struggle, who remembered the Christmas after Sarah died when money had been so tight that Evan had considered skipping gifts entirely. She and Maddie worked together wrapping presents, their chatter a constant background hum while the adults organized by age and gender. At one point, Evan looked up to find both girls carefully wrapping a doll, their faces serious with concentration, and felt his heart swell with something that might have been peace. They're good kids, Preacher said, appearing beside him with a box of action figures. Both of them. Been through hell and came out sweet. Yeah, they have. Evan taped up a box of Lego sets. I keep waiting for Lily to crack, to have some kind of delayed breakdown from watching me get shot. But she seems okay. Happy, even. Kids are resilient. More resilient than we give them credit for. And she's got you, and she's got Maddie, and she's got all of us. That's a good support system. Preacher set down his box. How about you, though? You doing okay? It was a question Evan got a lot from the Saints, these men who looked like they'd rather fight than feel, but were actually deeply attuned to each other's emotional states. Getting there. The therapy helps. The writing helps. Having you guys helps. Good, because we're not going anywhere. You're stuck with us. I've had worse problems. By Christmas Eve, Evan's shoulder had healed enough that Dr. Okonkwo cleared him for full duty. No more restrictions, no more sling, just some permanent scarring and the occasional ache. He celebrated by taking Lily to see Christmas lights, riding through neighborhoods where families had gone all out with decorations, sitting on the borrowed Sportster with his daughter's arms wrapped around his waist. It was cold, but Lily didn't complain. She just held on tight and gasped at the particularly elaborate displays, her breath fogging in the winter air, her laughter bright as bells. They stopped at the town square where Ridgefield had erected its annual Christmas tree, a 20-foot spruce covered in lights and ornaments made by local school children. Lily's ornament was somewhere on that tree, a popsicle stick reindeer with googly eyes that she'd made in art class. Standing there in the cold, watching his daughter search the branches for her creation, Evan felt Sarah's presence like she was standing right beside him. Not in a ghostly way, but in the way lost loved ones live on in memory and influence. She was in Lily's stubborn determination, in her kindness, in her joy at simple things. Found it! Lily pointed triumphantly at a low branch. There's my reindeer. That's definitely the best ornament on the whole tree. Dad, you have to say that. You're my dad. Doesn't make it less true. They stood there a while longer, father and daughter, watching people bustle around the square with last-minute shopping bags and cups of hot chocolate. The Iron Saints had a booth set up selling raffle tickets for their toy drive, and Evan recognized several of the guys manning it. Bear's booming laugh carried across the square, and Tank was dressed as Santa Claus, his massive frame perfect for the role. This was home now. Not just the physical space of their apartment, but this, the town, the people, the connections that had formed from one moment of courage in a coffee shop. Walking back to the motorcycle, Lily took his hand. Dad, this has been a really weird year. That's an understatement. But also kind of a good year. Is that weird? That something bad happened, but good things came from it? Evan stopped walking, crouching down to her level despite the protest from his shoulder. It's not weird at all, kiddo. That's how life works sometimes. Bad things and good things all mix together, and we don't get to choose what happens, but we get to choose how we respond. I chose to help Maddie, and because of that choice, we found family. We found the saints. We found something bigger than just the two of us. I like having a big family. Me too, Lily. Me too. As they rode home through the cold December night, Evan thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, alone, struggling, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. And he thought about the man he was now, connected, supported, healing in ways that went deeper than physical wounds. One bullet had changed everything. One moment of instinct had rewritten his entire life. And somehow, impossibly, it had rewritten it for the better. Spring came to Ridgefield with the gentle insistence of something that had been waiting patiently through a long winter. The snow melted into rivulets that ran down Main Street. Crocuses pushed through the thawing ground in Mrs. Chen's flower boxes, and the air carried that particular scent of renewal that made even the most cynical hearts believe in new beginnings. Evan stood outside Ridgefield Elementary on a Wednesday morning in late April, his leather jacket, a gift from the Iron Saints for his birthday, zipped against the morning chill that still lingered despite the calendar's promises. 6 months had passed since the shooting, half a year since his life had pivoted on the axis of a single moment, and he was waiting for something he'd never imagined he'd be part of. Lily emerged from the school doors with Maddie, as always, but today they were flanked by Mrs. Patterson, Lily's teacher, and Dr. Harrison, the principal. Both adults wore expressions of carefully maintained neutrality, the kind that came before either very good news or very bad news, and Evan felt his pulse quicken despite his best efforts at calm. "Mr. Cole," Dr. Harrison said, extending his hand, "thank you for meeting with us. Could we speak inside for a moment? Lily and Maddie can wait in the office. There are cookies." The girls exchanged glances, clearly picking up on the tension, but the promise of cookies won out over curiosity. They followed Mrs. Patterson while Evan walked with Dr. Harrison to his office, a space that smelled like old books and industrial cleaner, decorated with children's artwork and motivational posters about believing in yourself. "Am I in trouble?" Evan asked, only half joking. "Did Lily do something?" "No, nothing like that. Quite the opposite, actually." Dr. Harrison gestured to a chair while he settled behind his desk. "Lily and Maddie have become something of leaders in their class. They've started an anti-bullying initiative, actually, helping kids who are being picked on, organizing activities to include children who might otherwise be left out. Mrs. Patterson has been very impressed." Evan felt pride swell in his chest. "That sounds like Lily. She's always been empathetic." "It's more than empathy, Mr. Cole. It's courage. The same courage you showed that day in the coffee shop." Dr. Harrison folded his hands on his desk. "Which brings me to why I asked you here. We're organizing an assembly next month, a community safety day, teaching children about emergency preparedness, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. We'd like you to speak." The request landed like a physical blow. "Speak? To the whole school?" "To the students, yes, and their families. We're opening it to parents as well. We want you to talk about what happened, about the choice you made, about courage and protecting others. Keep it age-appropriate, of course, but honest. These children need to understand that heroes aren't just in movies. They're regular people who make extraordinary choices." Evan's mouth had gone dry. Public speaking had never been his strength. He'd barely made it through his wedding vows without his voice shaking, and that was in front of 50 people who loved him. This would be hundreds, maybe more, all staring at him, expecting wisdom he wasn't sure he possessed. "I don't know if I'm the right person." "You're exactly the right person. You're living proof that one person's actions can change everything. That's a message worth sharing." Dr. Harrison's expression softened. "I understand if you're hesitant. It's not a small ask. But think about it. Talk to your daughter. Talk to your—" He paused, searching for the word. "Your brothers at the Iron Saints. Then let me know." Evan left the office with his head spinning, collected Lily and Maddie, and drove them both to Ryder's place, a 2-story house on the edge of town with a garage that was really a motorcycle workshop and a backyard that had become a second home to both girls. Ryder was in the garage when they arrived, elbow deep in the engine of a vintage Harley, grease on his hands and concentration on his face. He looked up when Evan's bike rumbled to a stop and immediately read something in Evan's expression. "Girls, go inside. Maddie, show Lily that new game Aunt Rachel sent you." The girls disappeared in a flurry of excitement, and Ryder wiped his hands on a rag, giving Evan his full attention. "What happened?" Evan explained about the assembly, about Dr. Harrison's request, about the sudden weight of expectation that had settled on his shoulders like wet cement. Ryder listened without interrupting, his pale blue eyes thoughtful, until Evan ran out of words and stood there feeling exposed and uncertain. "You're going to say yes," Ryder said finally. "I don't think I can do it." "Of course you can. Question is whether you will." Ryder set down the rag and leaned against his workbench. "Cole, let me tell you something about courage. It's not about not being scared. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. You proved that when you took that bullet. Now you're just being asked to talk about it. Same principle applies. What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing? Then you say the wrong thing. You're not a politician or a motivational speaker. You're a guy who made a split-second choice to protect a child. That's the story. That's all you need to tell." Ryder crossed his arms. "Besides, think about what this means for Lily. She gets to see her dad stand up in front of everyone and own what he did. That's powerful. That teaches her that we don't hide from our actions. We acknowledge them and stand behind them." Evan knew Ryder was right, knew that refusing would be letting fear win, but the thought of standing on a stage with hundreds of eyes on him made his stomach churn. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. These opportunities don't wait forever." That evening, after dinner at Ryder's house, a boisterous affair with the two girls chattering nonstop and Ryder's latest girlfriend, a nurse named Rachel, keeping the conversation flowing, Evan and Lily drove home through streets that had become as familiar as breathing. The spring air was sweet through his helmet, and Lily's arms around his waist were steady and sure. She'd become a confident passenger, no longer tense when he took turns, trusting him completely. At a stoplight, she leaned forward and shouted over the engine, "Dad, are you going to do the speech?" He shouldn't have been surprised that she knew. Lily had always been perceptive, had probably picked up on every nuance of his conversation with Dr. Harrison despite not being in the room. "I'm thinking about it. How would you feel if I did?" "I think it would be cool. I think you should tell everyone what really happened, not the version people made up on the internet." The light changed and Evan accelerated, but Lily's words stayed with him. She was right. The story had been filtered through so many retellings, so many social media posts and news articles, that the truth had become obscured. Maybe speaking at the assembly would be a chance to reclaim the narrative, to tell it simply and honestly without embellishment or agenda. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat at his small kitchen table with a notebook and pen, trying to organize his thoughts. What would he even say? How did you compress something as complex as that moment, the fear, the instinct, the pain, the aftermath, into a speech appropriate for children? He started writing, scratching out lines, starting over. The words felt clumsy at first, inadequate to capture the reality of what had happened. But gradually, slowly, something began to take shape. Not a speech about heroism or bravery, but a story about choice, about seeing someone in danger and deciding in less than 2 seconds that their life mattered more than your own safety. He wrote for 2 hours, until his hand cramped and his shoulder ached from hunching over the table. When he finally read back what he'd written, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was true. It was enough. The next morning, he called Dr. Harrison and said yes. The assembly was scheduled for May 15th, giving Evan 3 weeks to prepare and second-guess his decision approximately 4,000 times. The Iron Saints, when they heard about it, responded with characteristic enthusiasm and support. Preacher offered to help him refine the speech, applying his experience as a sometime chaplain who had given many talks about faith and resilience. Bear insisted on coming to the assembly for moral support, and within days the entire club had decided to attend, transforming what was supposed to be a school event into something bigger. "You don't have to all come," Evan protested at the next club meeting. "It's just a school assembly." "Brother, you're one of us," Tank rumbled, his Santa Claus voice somehow intimidating even when saying supportive things. "Where you go, we go. That's the deal." Ryder nodded agreement. "Besides, those kids should see what community looks like. They should see that when one of our own steps up, we're all there backing him up. That's the lesson, Cole. Not just about individual courage, but about collective support." So it was decided. The Iron Saints would attend in force, turning Evan's speech into a demonstration of brotherhood and family. The 3 weeks passed in a blur of rehearsal and revision. Evan practiced his speech in front of the bathroom mirror, feeling ridiculous but persistent. He rehearsed it for Marcus, who gave feedback about pacing and emphasis. He even ran through it for Lily, who listened with grave attention and then said, "It's good, Dad, but you should talk more about being scared. Kids need to know that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared." He added a section about fear, about how his hands had been shaking when the paramedics arrived, how he'd thought about Lily being orphaned, how the terror hadn't hit him until after the adrenaline wore off. The speech became more vulnerable, more human, and paradoxically more powerful because of it. May 15th arrived with perfect spring weather, blue skies, gentle breeze, temperatures in the mid-60s that felt like a gift after the long Ohio winter. Evan woke early, his stomach doing acrobatics, and went through his morning routine on autopilot. Lily was unusually quiet over breakfast, sensing his nerves, until finally she reached across the table and took his hand. "Dad, you're going to be great. I know you are." "How do you know?" "Because you're telling the truth, and the truth is always easier than lying." Out of the mouths of babes, Evan thought, not for the first time. They arrived at the school an hour early, and Evan was surprised to find the parking lot already filling up. Parents had taken time off work to attend. Community members who didn't even have children at the school had come, and in one corner of the lot, arranged in perfect formation, sat 15 Harley-Davidsons, chrome gleaming in the morning sun. The Iron Saints stood beside their bikes, all wearing their cuts, looking like something between an honor guard and a motorcycle gang from Central Casting. But when Evan approached, they greeted him with hugs and handshakes and words of encouragement that dispelled any intimidating image. "Ready to do this?" Ryder asked, his hand heavy and reassuring on Evan's good shoulder. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's my boy." Dr. Harrison met them at the entrance, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of 15 bikers, but recovering quickly. "Mr. Cole, gentlemen, thank you for coming. We've set up in the gymnasium. Capacity is about 400, and we're nearly full. Quite the turnout." 400 people. Evan's mouth went dry, but he nodded and followed the principal through familiar hallways that suddenly felt like a gauntlet. Lily walked beside him, holding his hand, and her small fingers wrapped around his were the only thing keeping him from turning around and running. The gymnasium had been transformed. Rows of folding chairs faced a small stage with a podium, microphone, and large screen for presentations. Children sat in the front sections, organized by grade, while parents and community members filled the back. The Iron Saints filed in and stood along the back wall, arms crossed, a wall of leather and loyalty. Evan sat in a chair at the side of the stage, watching the room fill, feeling the weight of expectation settle over him like a physical thing. Mrs. Patterson spoke first, talking about the anti-bullying initiative and the importance of standing up for others. Then Dr. Harrison introduced Evan, giving a brief overview of the shooting and its aftermath, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed gymnasium. "And now, please welcome Evan Cole." The applause started immediately, polite at first, then building, then becoming a standing ovation that made Evan's eyes sting with unexpected tears. He walked to the podium on legs that felt disconnected from his body, looked out at 400 faces all focused on him, and nearly forgot every word he'd prepared. Then he found Lily in the third row, sitting next to Maddie, both girls looking at him with identical expressions of pride and encouragement, and he remembered why he was doing this. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice steadier than he'd expected. "Thank you for that welcome. I'm not really comfortable with applause, to be honest. I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone should do when they see a child in danger." He paused, gathering his thoughts, then began the speech he'd rehearsed so many times it had become part of his DNA. "On October 9th of last year, I took my daughter Lily to get coffee before school. It was a Tuesday morning. We were running late. We were always running late. And I was thinking about work and bills and all the ordinary things that fill up a parent's mind. I wasn't thinking about heroism or courage or any of the things people have called me since. I was just thinking about getting caffeine and getting Lily to school on time." A few chuckles rippled through the audience, and Evan felt some of his tension ease. "While we were there, a man came in with a gun. He was desperate, probably high on drugs, definitely not thinking clearly. And in the chaos that followed, that gun swung toward a little girl, Ryder's daughter, Maddie, who's sitting right there next to my Lily. He pointed, and both girls waved, breaking the tension further. I didn't think about what I was doing. There wasn't time. I saw a child in danger, and my body moved before my brain could catch up. I put myself between that gun and Maddie, and I took a bullet in my shoulder. It hurt. It hurt a lot. And I don't recommend getting shot as a life experience. More laughter. Nervous, but genuine. But here's what I want you all to understand, especially you kids sitting up front. I'm not a hero. I'm a regular guy who works construction, who struggles to pay bills, who can't cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. I'm not special. What I did, what anyone can do, is make a choice in the moment to help someone else. That's all courage is. It's choosing to act despite being scared. He paused, letting that sink in, watching young faces process the information. And I was scared. My hands were shaking. I thought about my daughter, about how she could lose me the same way she lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago. I thought about all the reasons why throwing myself in front of a bullet was a terrible idea. But I did it anyway because the alternative, watching a child get hurt when I could prevent it, that was unacceptable. That's what courage means. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Evan looked up from his notes, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. After the shooting, something unexpected happened. The Iron Saints, he gestured to the bikers along the back wall. This motorcycle club that I barely knew, they adopted me and my daughter into their family. They helped us financially when I couldn't work. They fixed things around my apartment. They taught me to ride a motorcycle. They showed up over and over without being asked, without expecting anything in return. That's the other lesson I want you to take from this story. Community matters. Supporting each other matters. We're not meant to go through life alone. He could see some parents nodding, could see the Iron Saints standing a little straighter. Since the shooting, my daughter Lily and Maddie have become best friends. They've started helping other kids who are being bullied or left out. They've created something beautiful from something terrible. That's what humans do. We take pain and transform it into purpose. We take fear and transform it into action. We take isolation and transform it into community. Evan's voice cracked slightly, and he didn't try to hide it. I can't tell you what you should do if you ever face a situation like I did. Everyone has to make their own choices based on their own circumstances. But I can tell you this. Every day we all have opportunities to be courageous in small ways. Standing up for someone being bullied, helping someone who's struggling, being kind when it's easier to be cruel. Those are choices too. Those matter too. He looked directly at the children in the front rows. You don't have to take a bullet to be brave. You just have to choose, over and over, to do what's right even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when no one's watching. That's the real heroism. Not the dramatic moments that make the news, but the daily choice to be a good person, to help others, to build community. Evan glanced down at his notes, realized he was nearly done, felt both relief and a strange sadness that this moment was almost over. I'm grateful for what happened, which is a weird thing to say about getting shot, but I am. Because that moment gave me a family I didn't know I needed. It gave my daughter a best friend. It showed me that there are people in this world who show up when you're down, who support you without judgment, who understand that we're all just doing our best with what we've got. He looked up, finding Ryder's eyes across the gymnasium, seeing the emotion there. To the Iron Saints, thank you for making me one of your own. To my daughter Lily, thank you for being brave through everything we've been through. To Maddie and Ryder, thank you for letting me be part of your story. And to all of you, thank you for listening to mine. Be kind. Be brave. Take care of each other. That's all any of us can do. The applause started before he'd even stepped away from the podium, building into another standing ovation that felt overwhelming and humbling. Evan walked back to his seat on shaking legs, sat down, and let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 3 weeks. Dr. Harrison returned to the podium, wiping his eyes unashamedly. Thank you, Mr. Cole. That was exactly what we needed to hear. The rest of the assembly passed in a blur of presentations about emergency preparedness and conflict resolution, but Evan barely processed any of it. He sat in his chair feeling drained and oddly light, like he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it was there. After the assembly ended and families began filing out, Evan was immediately surrounded. Parents wanting to shake his hand, thank him, tell him their own stories of courage or community. Children asking to see his scar, wanting to know what the bullet felt like, processing trauma through curiosity. Teachers expressing gratitude for his honesty and vulnerability. Through it all, the Iron Saint stood watch, a protective perimeter that gently managed the crowd, made sure Evan wasn't overwhelmed, gave him space to breathe when he needed it. Ryder eventually extracted him entirely, guiding him outside where the spring air felt cool and clean after the stuffiness of the packed gymnasium. "You did good, brother," Ryder said simply. "Really good." "I almost threw up twice." "Nobody could tell. You looked calm as anything up there." Ryder pulled out his phone, showed Evan the screen. "This is already trending locally. Someone recorded it and posted it online. You're about to go viral again." Evan groaned. "I can't handle another round of internet fame." "Then don't read the comments. Just know you did something important today. You gave those kids permission to be scared and brave at the same time. You gave their parents a reminder about what matters. And you gave us—" He gestured to the Iron Saints, who were chatting with families and signing autographs for starstruck children. A reminder about why we do what we do. Lily appeared then, dragging Maddie by the hand, both girls practically vibrating with excitement. "Dad, that was amazing. Everyone's talking about it. And Mrs. Patterson said we can do a special project based on your speech." "What kind of project?" "A kindness wall, where kids write about times they were brave or helped someone or saw someone else do something good. Isn't that cool?" It was cool, Evan realized. It was exactly the kind of ripple effect that justified standing up there and feeling vulnerable in front of 400 people. His story wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to the community, to these children who would carry forward its lessons in ways he couldn't predict or control. "That's very cool, kiddo. I'm proud of you." The Iron Saints organized an impromptu celebration at the clubhouse that evening. Burgers on the grill, kids running wild in the backyard, adults sitting around the fire pit talking about everything and nothing. It felt like family in the truest sense, chosen rather than obligated, bound by shared values rather than shared DNA. Preacher found Evan near the fire as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked almost unreal. "You know what you did today, don't you?" "Gave a speech?" "Gave testimony. That's what we call it in the church, bearing witness to truth. You stood up there and testified about courage and community and transformation. That's powerful stuff, Cole. That changes people." Evan watched sparks drift up from the fire, watched Lily and Maddie chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, watched the saints laugh and talk and exist in this moment of peace they'd created together. "I just told the truth. That's all testimony is. The truth, told with courage." Preacher sipped his beer. "You've come a long way from that scared guy bleeding on a coffee shop floor." "I had help. We all do. That's the point." As the evening deepened into night, as children were collected and goodbyes were said and promises were made to do this again soon, Evan found himself alone with Ryder near the dying fire. Both men stared into the embers, companionable silence stretching between them. "I never thanked you properly," Evan said finally, "for everything. For the money, the help, the brotherhood, for teaching me to ride, for giving Lily a friend in Maddie, for making us part of your family." "You saved my daughter's life," Ryder said, his voice rough with emotion. "There's no proper thanks for that. There's just—" He gestured helplessly. "This, forever. You and Lily are saints for life, whether you're patched in or not. That's non-negotiable." "I'm planning to get patched in, actually. Been talking to Preacher about prospecting." Ryder turned to look at him, surprise and pleasure warring on his face. "Yeah? You serious?" "Yeah, I've been writing for 6 months now. I love it. I love what the club stands for. I love who I am when I'm with you guys. So yeah, I want to make it official. Full member, not just honorary." "Brother?" Ryder's voice broke and he cleared his throat roughly. "That would be an honor. For all of us." They shook hands, and then Ryder pulled him into a hug that would have crushed bones if Evan's shoulder hadn't fully healed. It was the kind of hug that said everything words couldn't: gratitude and brotherhood and family and home, 6 months later in November, Evan completed his prospect period and was patched into the Iron Saints as a full member in a ceremony that felt more meaningful than his high school graduation, his army swearing in, maybe even his wedding. The club voted unanimously to accept him, and when Ryder placed the Iron Saints colors on his back, that leather cut with its patches and emblems, Evan felt like he'd finally found where he belonged. Lily watched from the sidelines with Maddie, both girls now 10 years old and inseparable, and when it was done and Evan was officially a saint, she ran to him with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so proud of you, Dad. I'm proud of us, kiddo. We made it. We're okay. We're better than okay. We're home." And she was right. Standing there in this clubhouse surrounded by brothers who'd become family, wearing colors that meant something, riding a bike that represented freedom and healing, Evan Cole realized that the bullet he'd taken in that coffee shop hadn't just saved Maddie's life, it had saved his own. Not physically, though that too, but saved him from isolation, from grief that had been slowly fossilizing into permanent bitterness, from a life of just getting by instead of truly living. That moment of instinct and courage had opened a door he didn't know existed, leading him to a family he didn't know he needed, to a version of himself he didn't know he could become. The years that followed were good ones. Lily and Maddie remained best friends through middle school and high school, eventually going to college together and becoming roommates. The kindness wall at Ridgefield Elementary became a permanent installation, inspiring similar projects at other schools. The Iron Saints continued their community work, with Evan becoming increasingly involved in their outreach programs, particularly those focused on veterans and single parents. He never remarried, though he dated occasionally. Some part of him would always belong to Sarah, and that was okay. He had Lily, had the Saints, had a life that felt full and purposeful. That was enough. That was everything. The video of his assembly speech did go viral, accumulating millions of views and inspiring copycat kindness initiatives across the country. Evan granted a handful of interviews over the years, always uncomfortable with the attention, but recognizing the platform's value. He spoke about courage, about community, about the importance of showing up for each other in a world that often felt fractured and hostile. But mostly, he just lived. He rode his Harley on weekends with the Saints, worked his construction job, watched Lily grow into a woman who embodied everything Sarah had been: compassionate, fierce, brave. He attended club meetings and charity events and Sunday dinners at Ryder's house. He was an uncle to Maddie and to the other Saints' children. He was a brother to men who would die for him, who would drop everything to help him, who understood that family wasn't always about blood. On the 10th anniversary of the shooting, Ridgefield organized a commemoration ceremony at the Morning Grind, which had become something of a local landmark. A plaque was installed near the entrance. On this spot, Evan Cole demonstrated that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. May we all strive to protect and serve our community with such selfless bravery. Evan stood before the plaque with Lily, now 18 and preparing for college, and Ryder and Maddie, and a crowd of people who'd been touched by that moment in ways both direct and indirect. The original owner, Cheryl, had retired, but the new owners had maintained the coffee shop's character, understanding that they were stewards of something meaningful. "It feels like a lifetime ago," Evan said quietly to Ryder as the ceremony wound down and people began filtering out. "And also like yesterday. That's trauma for you. Never really leaves, just becomes part of your story." Ryder watched Maddie and Lily pose for photos with the plaque, both young women radiant and alive. But sometimes the trauma transforms into something beautiful, like what you built, what we all built together. I couldn't have done it without the Saints. And we wouldn't be half the club we are without you pushing us to be better, to do more, to remember why we wear these colors. Ryder clapped him on the shoulder. "You saved my daughter that day, Cole, but in a lot of ways you saved all of us too. Reminded us what we're supposed to stand for." As the sun set over Ridgefield that evening, Evan rode home through streets he knew by heart, his daughter on the bike behind him, her arms around his waist steady and strong. The scar on his shoulder ached slightly. It always did when the weather changed, but he wore it with pride. It was a reminder, a badge, a testament to a single moment that had rewritten everything. He thought about the man he'd been 10 years ago in that coffee shop, running late and stressed and alone. He thought about the split-second decision that had changed the trajectory of his entire existence. And he thought about all the lives that had been touched because one person chose courage over safety, connection over isolation, love over fear. One bullet, one choice. One man who decided that a stranger's child mattered as much as his own safety. And from that moment, a family was born, a community strengthened, a legacy created that would ripple forward for generations. As they pulled into their driveway, Evan had bought a small house 2 years ago, finally stable enough to stop renting. Lily dismounted and pulled off her helmet, her face thoughtful. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I used to be angry at you for taking that bullet, for risking leaving me alone." She said it calmly, without accusation. "But I get it now. You couldn't not do it. It's who you are. And everything good in our lives came from that moment. The saints, Maddie, all of it. So thank you for being brave, for being you." Evan felt tears prick his eyes for what felt like the 1,000th time that day. "Thank you for understanding, and for being brave too. You're the best thing I ever did, Lily Cole." "We're the best thing, Dad. We're a team. The best team." They walked inside together, father and daughter, survivor and witness, two people bound by blood and trauma and love and the kind of courage that doesn't announce itself but simply shows up when needed. Behind them, the Harley sat silent in the driveway, chrome gleaming in the streetlight, a machine that represented freedom and family and the unexpected ways that life can transform when you choose to be brave. And somewhere in Ridgefield, in homes and schools and gathering places, people carried forward the lessons of that October day, that courage matters, that community matters, that one person's choice to act can change everything. The story of Evan Cole and the Iron Saints became legend in their small town. A tale told to children to teach them about bravery, told to adults to remind them about kindness, told to anyone who needed to believe that in a complicated, often harsh world, good people still existed. And they did exist. They rode motorcycles and worked construction and raised children and showed up for each other. They were flawed and human and real. They were a family born not from obligation but from choice, not from blood but from courage. They were exactly what the world needed. And it all started with one man, one moment, one bullet, and the unshakable belief that protecting the innocent was worth any price. Even 10 years later, even with all the time that had passed and all the healing that had occurred, Evan Cole would make the same choice without hesitation. Because some things transcend fear. Some things matter more than safety. Some things are worth a bullet. And family, real family, chosen family, the kind built on sacrifice and sustained by love, is worth everything.